apparently in my lifetime, you either need to be a draft dodger or a disbarred lawyer or both in order to be president. Like, that's just a thing.
Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Hey, look at us. We're back at the Paranoid American podcast. We were gone for a little bit, but we didn't actually go anywhere. I just been catching up. And actually, talking about catching up, I got some long overdue business here to talk to Ben Balderson. You might know him from Odin's Alchemy podcast, maybe from the Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes with Steve Poikonen and Alan Marcus, two of the other coolest guys in the freaking podcast realm. Today, we're going to talk about weed and Norse mythology, and not in equal amounts, but we're kind of going to like jump around a little bit, and I'm going to get straight up schooled by one of the masters. So welcome to Paranoid American Podcast, finally, and thanks for spending some time with me, man.
Oh man, it has been overdue. It's kind of amazing. We somehow managed to regularly miss each other, including even last time I was on a Secret Society of Good Guys. You happened to be gone that week. Like,
that was Bohemian Grove week. Yeah, that was a long week.
Oofta.
And we've talked before many times on other people's podcasts and stuff. So we just haven't had like a one-on-one here to where I get to drive the discussion and ask you the questions that I want to ask. Before we even started recording this, we were talking about a bunch of different topics. I know you can go deep into Odin and Norse mythology. We'll touch on that just like a little bit, but really I want to ask you, as a consumer of a medical consumer, by the way, let me just clarify that, a legal medical consumer of the ganj, you're kind of like a master in this field. You know way more than most people ever in multiple lifetimes. So, what do you got to say for yourself, man? Is it just like a criminal mentality that you're stuck in, that you have to deal with drugs, or what?
No. Actually, funny enough, I was when I was younger, the Captain America type. You know, I'm a veteran like yourself. I did not. Our departure was a little different, but I was the Captain America type, and then I was a Desert Storm veteran. And so saw some weird stuff, you know, things that didn't quite match up.
Nephilim? Did you see giants?
No,
okay.
No, just stuff that the government, you know, the public gets one story, but you know another story. And so it disenfranchised me of that a bit. And then I got out and I was helping my uncle be an electrician. He wanted to start an electrical contracting company. And I think maybe from touching so much copper wire, apparently I have something called Wilson's disease. And so the copper will build up where most people can process copper. With me, it'll build up in my system eventually, and it all goes up to my brain, and it'll push out in my eyes. And so it looks
wait,
like
wait, what, dude? You got copper literally comes out of your eyeballs?
Well, it pushes out and it discolors my eye. So it looks like I have hazel eyes, but I have green eyes. And it's because there's a brown star that changes size around my pupil. And that's how much copper is overabundant in my system. And the bigger it gets, the closer I am to having a grand mal seizure.
I've never even heard of this. Does this come with any superpowers by any chance?
No, not that I've noticed.
No,
maybe I have not discovered it yet.
Does lightning like seek you out? You got to hide extra from like lightning storms, or?
I definitely have a whole thing with electricity. That's a fact, and I can take more than most. I got hit by 477 once. That was not pleasant, but I threw me probably 10 or 12 feet, and I got up pissed off as hell. Was going to go beat up the boss over the whole deal because he told us that the whole grid was shut off, but I happened to be on an emergency light, so the main grid would have shut off, but that light would have stayed on, and so it chucked me. But it's good I didn't find him. That dude was a monkey. Like, he would have beat my ass.
I've never even. What was that called? Wilson's disease.
Wilson's disease. It's super rare. And because of the way it expresses, it's only an ophthalmologist that diagnosed it. So I went in because I was having seizures already, and they were worried about shrapnel in my eyes because they were getting ready to do this brain scan on me. And so they sent me into the ophthalmologist, and he's like, "Oh no, this guy has Wilson's disease." And he showed him the inside of my eyeball, and they're like, "All this is copper." And so the copper builds up in my brain, and then I'll end up having a grand mal seizure. My wife says I smell like a wet penny right before I do it.
What do you just have to stay away from pennies and you're good? Or like what how does it change your normal life? Like what kind of stuff do you end up avoiding?
I try not to touch copper too much. And then I'm also a vegetarian. So that made a big difference, eating less, eating no meat at all. So my diet's real specific about that. And then also pistachios. I don't know why.
There's copper in meat and pistachios?
Yeah, some nuts are kind of heavy in the copper. And you got to imagine, just like your blood, your copper is so when you're looking at the way your body, your heart's working, you've got two different sides. One's your oxygenated side and one's your hydrogenated side, right? And so the oxygen's breaking things down and the hydrogen's building things up, right? And so the copper is draws hydrogen and the iron draws oxygen. So you need all that. So you need more iron in your body, to get the oxygen drawn, but then you need the copper to get the hydrogen drawn.
You sound like an earth elemental. I just have to say that. like an actual breathing earth elemental. That's wild. And before we even go on any other tangents, what did you see in the military that disenfranchised? Because I have a similar story. Mine's super lame, but it was the first time that I was like, oh, government corruption is very real. And it's basically all government would have to be corrupt in order for this thing to even at this low level to be corrupt. So like, what did you see? You can leave out names and bodies or whatever.
Well, there, as far as if you asked me in reality, if I was at war, I've never been to war. Like, yeah, I've got medals for 3 different wars, but I haven't seen anything that the only dude in my unit that ever got hurt because of actual doing something, it wasn't some battle. The dumb fucker was driving around with a fucking Humvee and ran over a landmine, and it wasn't even their landmine. It was ours. And ran over a fucking landmine. He got a Purple Heart. This is all just ridiculous. I'm like, and nobody, there was no grand enemy. There was no nothing. It was just like, it was ridiculous. And then you notice that the in it, like that guy, he got a Purple Heart, but he was one of the office guys, and he was liked by the office people. Just like, even though I graduated top of my class, including PT, fucking top of that also. I didn't get extra promotions, but like the office guys did when they graduated top of their class. I'm like, what the fuck? And the whole system was just kind of bullshit and nonsense. And like this part was kind of cool, but the motor sergeant, he'd come around before drug tests, and if you were on drugs, they'd just make you sure you disappeared. Like, there was nothing at all by the books. And then like the way they would do shit like Blackhawks, they talked about, somebody said stories about them torturing people. Like, it might have been, the prisoners and things like that, because they would drop their helicopters down and blast them. Like, they do that shit to us too. Like, they're just dickheads in the Blackhawks. That's just how it is. You can't do anything fucking thing to them or do anything about it. So yeah, they fucking come down and fuck your shit all up and wake everybody up and tear everything apart and then laugh and then leave. That's the way this goes down.
That's kind of what they're looking for, though. Like, I feel that makes you have the qualities that they're specifically trying to find in this huge haystack of recruits constantly coming. Yeah, I remember how they were picking out like the absolute insane people to go into like Sears and to go in, because I was in the Air Force, into like the paratroopers and stuff. I went through one of the initial trainings. And one of it was like having to hold your breath and swim. And I was on the swim team forever. So I was able to get through the stuff that was in the pool. And then they were like, all right, now climb to the top of this like telephone pole and just like stand on it for a while. I'm out. I just like, this is not for me. No, thank you.
Dude, when I went to do rappelling, we had a Delta Force first sergeant, and we climbed up onto this tower. And this fucker does this spider rappelling where he just ties the rope off on his side and then jumps down like head first. And right before he lands, he goes like this and just runs away, and the rope goes, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, fucking, I don't got wings. You must be fucking nuts. Why would I jump off this tower? You're fucking stupid. I mean, we didn't even have to do it like that even, but they want you know how they want you to go like this until you're like upside down and then kick away. And I'm like, no fucking way. You guys are stupid. No.
Yeah, we're not Neo, and this is not the Matrix.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Well, thank you for your service. Thank you for saving us from those terrorists. We really appreciate that. They were getting close, so you kept them at bay for another decade or so, I assume. Yeah. Real hostiles. And then two of them, they weren't even wars. It was the Mediterranean fucking, what the fuck? It was an action or something. Conflict, the Mediterranean conflict, because during Bill Clinton's era, we didn't have wars. We had conflicts. That's how they get away with saying that the Clinton era was the longest time without war. We still had conflicts. We still sent over troops. The countries just weren't typically big enough to really, like the Panama Canal takeover, like 3 hours later, they're like, all right, well, we're done here. Even the like non-war war in the early 2000s, it was like the medal we got was the Operation Iraqi Freedom, but that wasn't necessarily a war until they declare it as such. I don't know. It feels like it's just like one big semantics game, and I kind of hate semantics games, and that's majority of what politics and the military kind of gets into, right? Very, very, very small hattish.
I'm actually in an argument for the dog-faced dudes right now, trying to set up a debate, and it's with one of the ortho bros, and they are such little semantic, like, and right now we're even talking about this very subject, and I'm like, I'm going to attack the heart of the thing. And he's like, I'm not going to play the little word games. And he's like, no, that is the heart of it. No, the heart of it, the heart of the law is something like they said they wanted drug dealers to not sell things to little kids at schools. So they came up with the distance from the school and they made that a law. Now, the semantics of it is they use that to bust people that have nothing to do with little kids and use that same law as a weapon through the semantics of it by avoiding the heart of the situation, which would say, unless that guy was selling to a little kid, you should not apply this law to that person. And so that's just how the semantics of things go. That's what lawyers do. That's what small hats do. That's how they think that they can do the crap, like be shitbags and then like put it on a chicken or a sheep and then kill the chicken or sheep. And they're like, ha ha ha, it took my sins. Now it's ha ha ha. Like, you're fucking nuts.
I mean, I think I can't remember where I got this theory or this quote, but it's basically that every generation or two generations, the interpretation of all laws and religions completely change. So every major world religion, for example, even if it's well documented and it's got all these different books in it, every 50 years or so, the interpretation of that. So if you were to grab someone that's like an ortho bro from 50 years ago, and then 50 years before that, and then today, all three of those people are not going to come to common terms. They're going to be like, I can't, like, that this is absolutely not allowed in my understanding of this. And that goes to every sorts of, not just religion, but like you mentioned lawyers, man. I think that's what a lawyer does, is they understand what a word. I mean, you mentioned Bill Clinton earlier, right? What the definition of is. Yeah, man. I honestly, I think that was one of my reality breaking moments where it was like, oh my God, a simple word like is, it just seems like it fills in the spaces between other words that actually mean things. That can actually change the entire and I don't actually agree with that, but I can see that if legally it's interpreted that way, that's as much reality as that I got. You know, that's the reality that says that I got to pay my mortgage, otherwise the bank comes and gets it. And if I refuse to leave, then the cops come. And if I refuse to cooperate, then they tase me and they bring me like the logical conclusion of the semantics of a simple word can mean the difference between life and death, literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we fix that?
It's very interesting because I think that part of it is the complexity that we've created of language, where you understand that when language wasn't as complex, it actually probably had more meaning. You understood the situation of the heart of the situation, and the words weren't needed all that much. You know, like when you're out working with a guy in the field, like when I was a young electrician, the master that I was working with, he called every fucking thing a wiggy. Now, literally, there isn't even a thing anymore called a wiggy. That's a gone, done deal.
What word are you saying?
Wiggy, W-I-G-G, either Y or I-E. I don't fucking know.
Wiggy? Okay.
Yeah. And it was a wiggy. And this applied whether it was an amp meter, his multimeter, just a current sensor. So I absolutely had to add the context of the situation to what this motherfucker just said, because he's just said wiggy, and I've heard him apply the word wiggy to every single electrical sensing device, that is in the toolbox. So, and he's going to be pissed off if I bring him the wrong wiggy. Like, so at some point in time, because again, this is something that is very, again, it's funny because I'm having this conversation with the ortho bros. To me, this is very legalese. The legalese of something, you need it to be wordy. because they're going to take stupid things like, and Bill Clinton was a disbarred lawyer. Apparently in my lifetime, you either need to be a draft dodger or a disbarred lawyer or both in order to be president. Like that's just a thing. And if your wife's like a disbarred, like the Obamas, where they're both disbarred lawyers, well, shit, that's Jesus.
I didn't know this. I didn't know that about Clinton or about the Obamas.
Well, Clinton was a draft dodger. That was a fairly big ordeal when Clinton was getting.
But you said he was also disbarred?
No. I said either you have to be a disbarred lawyer or a draft dodger. Look at Trump. Trump's a draft dodger. Clinton's a draft dodger.
He had bone spurs, sir. Did you want him to hurt his feet?
You can't sit there and brag about how athletic you are and also tell me about your bone spurs and why you couldn't go serve. And also, in my opinion, and you know what, I come off fairly conservative because I'm a farmer. That's just how that is. So I'm a very salt of the earth person. And so I work off of reality first. And then the facade that you want to put on, the little fancy layers for a very masculine farmer, the framework and the functionality comes first. And then you put on the pretty. Like the pretty doesn't really mean anything. That's just a lacquer coating on something. And if the guts of it aren't good, then who fucking cares? So I come off very conservative most of the time.
The whole like legalese, like the verbosity of the English language compared to some older ones that you're saying that maybe this adds complexity that's not needed. Devil's advocate that in addition to the complexity, all these different words that we've got to describe things, sometimes they have a context baked into it. So you can derive what the context is from the word based on the different variations of it. I can't think of any good examples because even those would still need additional context. You know what I mean? But like the Eskimos have like 50 words for ice, whatever the hell that is.
Yes.
I'm sure each one of those words implies a slightly different context. Whereas if we just say ice, we could be talking about an ice wall, an ice cube, a frozen state of almost anything that doesn't even have to be water. Condensation sometimes is referred to as ice slushies. So there's some versions of that. And I guess that if you're with someone and you're working on a common goal where the context is implied, yeah, it almost makes sense that you would want to simplify language to the point where you don't have to fish around for words and understand things where the context is already given. But if it's written word that's going to be passed down for hundreds of thousands of years, do you think simple is good or complex is good?
In a language, I think simple is probably much better. If you look at it, the languages that they have the most problems with, like anybody that ever has seen Lady Babylon, that Amon Hillman, I'm sure he's right with his translations. This is an extraordinarily complex language, Greek, and it because it has so much complexity to it, it leaves itself open to a whole lot of shit, a whole lot of twisting and turning and whatnot. One of the things that I'm aware of that you don't even really get, quit eating the tissues. That's freaking torque converter shit.
I'm sorry. I won't do that again.
Yeah. My dogs, try and eat my tissues. I blow my nose out of, but then they'll also
there's copper in there. Calm down.
Right. Yeah. This has cleaning a damn torque converter. And anyways, dumbass.
Well, we can talk about linguistics some other time because there's other stuff that I really want to get into with you. I can't not ask you about some Norse stuff, and then we're going to talk about weed. But I just want to ask you is I've heard some various theories from all different angles, but that even though the Eddas are about 1,000 years before the New Testament comes out, but there's some explanations that the Odin story is based on the biblical Jesus story. Do you have any specific thoughts about? I'm sure you've heard that claim at least once in your lifetime, right?
More than a few times, and,
okay.
and given that.
The story predates the story of Christ, but then the Odin story that we know today is conventional being based on Christ. How true is any of that?
I definitely think that there's the Snorri interpretation somewhat caters to the Christian end of things. So you see some variance, and that's the thing is we actually do have regionally different stories. So there's in the Germanic version, there's only 7 worlds instead of 9. And so that's super interesting to me. And it adds on 2 more from the Christianized version. There's other various differences in the Danish version. So like in the Saxo Grammatica, they're less what you would consider a god. So more like maybe an in-between, like maybe like a demigod status where they're basically immortal and also have powers, but not necessarily this overarching being, which never should have been there. And then also, and I don't know, I think the whole the Loki thing where they've tried to make him into a devil type being, I don't even really see that in the Eddas. I think that just is more of from the take and through a Christianized lens of today. But absolutely. So when you look at Christianity as opposed, again, as Thomas said, Odinism and references to Odin predate Christianity and predate Christ. So this is ridiculous for starts. Well, then understand that it wasn't a canonized religion. There was, if you look at guys like Kip Davis, who has a Nobel Peace Prize for what that's worth in translation of Hebrew. He says that was a pagan religion and they had multiple different beliefs, and they followed different people and whatnot. And then you look at the time period where like Christians were having a lot of problems with the other religions. And it wasn't like today where like Christians burnt the Library of Alexandria.
That was one time. That was only one time.
One time. You hold it against us forever.
Let it go, guys.
So it was. So Constantine wanted a canonized version of a religion that would, in my opinion, in an Alexander the Great style, enfold the northern or white people. And so because when you look at the Mediterranean, them are not white people. So when they say Europe, they always, whenever you read about things, and especially with weird pagan rituals, it's always Rome and Greece. It's never Northern Europe. And so, but they wanted to bring them into the fold. And so Alexander the Great style, they had to incorporate a bunch of things and make it so that way it was suitable to those people. Because at the end of the day, you can change the name of whatever deity and it doesn't really matter if it's still got the same kind of conceptual base to it and you still get the same holidays and you're still paying the same amount of taxes. Poor people don't care that much. Like they're just like, oh, all right. Oh, it's Carl this week. Okay. Still 10% Carl? Good. Still got Sunday off? Excellent.
I think we're a very like mind on this one of like the syncretism where one religion becomes another over time. I guess deep down to oversimplify it, but it just seems like it was done out of convenience for exactly what you're talking about. It's like, man, we're so close. Like you're right here and I'm right here. Can't we just meet in the middle somewhere? We'll give you the yew tree, like we'll take a little bit of this from you and then a little give and take. So that way, when the same season comes around, you get Sunday off and, you're not allowed to eat fish or whatever the hell the thing is. as long as it fits in, it's like, okay, yeah, Carl.
As long as we're still doing the same thing, we don't care. Just don't make us change stuff. We're very habitual creatures, and if I can keep the habit, then I don't care.
Is there a case for a historical Odin?
I would absolutely say that there's a case for a historical Odin. On the same token, I also believe that most of these beings were real. So I just think that it's a much more regional thing than what they make out. So even when you look at the writings, and specifically, you can look at the time when Rome and the Odin heathen Germanic people started interacting, right?
Do you think that if we say like Odin had a historical counterpart, is this just an exceptional human, or is this like an actual demigod of some kind?
I think he's a god to a level that we don't have access to, but I think that we can achieve a similar result, that we can definitely become more than what we are now. And I think from my perspective, this is the whole reason that you should be studying Odin is it's a path to follow. He's a teacher, because nowhere in any lore does it say that he's going to give you special favors or privileges or anything like that. Like, you do the job, you get what you deserve, no matter which one it is. And so the Odin path, Odin, he becomes king of the Aesir and the Vanir. That's something very specifically that he did. And he went through trials in order to develop the knowledge and become something more. And I think that, to me, this is where, as an alchemist, I apply alchemy and my Odinism together, is that, to me, that is the great work that you were achieving. This is no different than like Gandalf. That's the whole trope of Gandalf, where he goes through the fire with the Balrog and then goes through the water. And that's your processing of the base course material in order to achieve the great work. And he comes back out Gandalf the White, because all the coarse carbon material has been burnt off, and now he's blah. And they even said, Gandalf, oh, I was called that once. Like, he's not even the same being anymore. Like, something, part of him is gone now, been sacrificed, and that's the ego. This is part of why in Odinism, they gives you your name, your ego. That's the thing other people recognize you as, but there's still a true you inside there that the world may not recognize at all. And it's the entire great work is burning off that dross of everything that isn't you, that the world is representing, and the truest parts of you are now open and exposed, and all that dross is gone. So that's what he was going through. And to me, Odin went through that on a higher level than what we'll be able to achieve, but we can still achieve a much higher greatness by following that path to some degree.
That sounds very cumbersome, and I don't see how any of that would help me pay my mortgage.
Yeah, it does not seem to help do any of that. In fact, trying to walk down that path more is going to just get you isolated from your friends. Everybody's going to think you're a weirdo. All the things that typical people care about, you're not going to care about. So you end up being a weirdo in the woods with a bunch of animals that just eats shit from his own property and is covered in shit all day and won't talk to other people.
Is there any kind of standard in paganism? Like, if would you ever be able to find two pagans that were self-taught or otherwise that didn't grow up, with each other, and have it be on some common ground, or is it always kind of like an absolute crapshoot?
So the Germanic heathenism, you're going to find quite a bit of parity with other people. The general, there's an honor that you have to act in. So there is an understanding that if I'm at your house, I'm going to follow your rules. You're king. I should not even be like over talking you. Things like that. There's very specific. If you look at the Havamal, which is Odin's words, it's split into 3 sections. One is how you behave when you're out in the world, and it's very specific. One is how you behave as a host, so when the world comes into your home, and then you have your more generalized just Odin stuff and his travels and tribulations and different advices. So when you're going to go over to somebody else's house, I would do my very best and to make sure that I respected any of your rules, respected your position, your wife, anything that I take. If you're going to feed me supper and I'm going to stay for a few days, I'm going to go out and chop your wood and maybe clean out your stalls, do whatever it is. I'm not going to sit and lay about like a fucking leech and just suck off of your benevolence and be a piss poor guest. I'm not going to take more than what I should. And anything that I'm going to give or you're going to give, there's going to be some sort of reciprocation to be had out of the ordeal.
What's the or else in this equation? Because I mean, coming from a Roman Catholic background, the or else is you go to hell. I think that's kind of the ultimate or else.
See, so our hell is not really the same as the Roman Catholic. So it doesn't have that like just good evil concept. Our hell is more like you failed. You just didn't make it on this level. And so you go back and recycle. And it's supposed to be an all right place. Like when Balder dies, he goes to hell and there's a party. Or like, our favorite dude. Yeah, and they had a feast and a big old party, and it was a grand old time. But your actions absolutely determine where you're going to go in the afterlife. And then also the idea that, so one of the stories is Odin is fighting with this other goddess, and he's talking about, and they're having a shit talk contest. And Odin tells her, her son's ugly and stinks, and he'll never produce grandchildren, and yada yada. And and after this whole litany of just horrible things, she looks at him and says, your son is a bad host," which it wasn't his direct son. It was down in his lineage, but his line of children said he's a bad host. So Odin immediately breaks off the argument and disguises himself and goes to this guy's castle in order to verify whether this is true or not. And he gets there, and there's a second son, and the second son stays out in the stables, and Odin pulls up, and the young man takes care of his horse, and he says, yeah, I'll take good care of your horse, and we'll get it watered and rubbed down and fed. And Odin's like, he's like, "Where are you going?" And Odin's like, "Up to the castle." He's like, "Oh, I wouldn't go up there. You won't like that much." So Odin goes up to the castle anyways, and there he gets disguised as a wandering old man, and he gets tied up. These people, get nasty with him and abuse him and tie him up, and he lets all of this happen, and they light him on fire to torture him. And of course, he's Odin, so he doesn't die, and he sits and lets himself be burnt for 3 days. And as he's sitting there in this fire, not dying, he notes everybody that has a good time and everybody that laughs and torments. And at the end of the 3 days, he kills all those people, including the bad, grandson or whatever, great grandson, whatever.
He sounds like a horrible host. That would be the worst party ever. You show up and they burn you for 3 days.
Yeah, worst party ever. So he kills all the people that joined in on the shitting on him and kills the host, and then promotes the one that lived out in the stables. He becomes king. And so you don't even know who that wanderer that shows up at your door is. And so one of the rules is, you show up at my door, I don't even have to know you, and you get first place by my fire, and you get something to eat, something to drink, get you warmed up and dried. And then if you're a decent guy, we'll keep exchanging. if you're a shithead, get out of here. But in anybody that shows up at your door, including one time we had a tweaker girl that was so messed up, she was completely out of her mind, didn't even know what her own name was, literally, and didn't know her own kid's name either. She had a tattoo of her kid's name on her arm, but she was a tweaker, so it was all like wrinkly and shit, and it was in Old English. And she looks at my wife, says, "What's this say?" And my wife's like, "Hunter or Gunter." And she goes, "That's my son's name, Hunter or Gunter." Like,
but she couldn't decide. She was like, "I'll just give them both."
Yeah. It's one of them. That's why I tattooed it here, so that way it was convenient. And yeah, it's one of those names. And so, but we gave her. It was not cold out that day. A fire would have sucked. But we gave her a frozen smoothie and took her to the hospital. And like, got her the fuck off the property. But you've still got to treat them decently and still make sure they're going to live, be a decent person about it. So that's very much geared into it, pretty across the board. Now, I can't speak for like the new age pagans and heathens, the ones that are on the more of the bent of Theosophy Society, where the Theosophical Society has basically subsumed most pagan type religions and a lot of Christianity, and people don't know it. Even when it, no matter whether it's things like everybody that talks about like the Great White Brotherhood and the people sitting above us watching in Shambhala and all that.
Yeah,
nonsense.
the Ascended Masters. Yeah,
the Ascended Masters, like your Super Friends team. Like like, you know what? I watched Super Friends when I was a kid too. Hey, when is it exactly again? Is it going to get shitty enough for the Super Friends to come down and start kicking ass? Do they have to wait till you're getting stung with scorpions, or what's the deal?
I guess I'd never even consider that the Ascended Masters ever come back. It feels more like a super secret club that you get invited to every once in a while. This is going to be the absolute worst analogy, but it's weed related. But there was that movie, I think it was called How High, with like Method Man and Redman in the early 2000s.
Dude, I'm that age. I definitely stoned watched that movie many times.
So one of the main premises is that they're going to school. I think Redman is going to school. They're both going to college, and their friend dies. And they grow, and if you study high and you take the test high, you get high grades. That was kind of logic. It made sense. But their friend dies, and they use his dead body to like feed the soil of this plant that they're growing. And then when they smoke that plant, they get his help because he was really good at math or something. So every time they need help, they would like smoke a joint of their friend's weed, and then he shows up and gives them the answers to the tests. And I guess I've always assumed that that's kind of what an Ascended Master is. Like, maybe you don't have to like smoke them, but like you tap into them, but it's not like they're coming down to help the world. They're just helping you out because you're the only one worthy of it.
So what would the mechanism be that would make that connection? And more importantly, what are they getting out of it? And
if we're talking Theosophy and Ascended Masters, you just gotta have like the best smelling philosophical farts. And once you like let one of those little great smelling farts out, the Ascended Masters smell it, and they come back down and they help you out because they're like, we love the smell of your farts, you'll love the smell of our farts. That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about as logical as what they seem to think, because these new age kids are like, oh yeah, I'm connected to ISIS and Hecate. It's not Hecate, it's not Hecate, it's Hecate. Like, and they just start listing out like an ISIS, and I found a trinket on the side of the road that was an Ankh, and so I think I'm reincarnated ISIS. And you're just like, why do you think that gods are like Pokemon or something?
I was literally thinking Pokemon in my mind because I know a few people in OTO as well, and there's like this thing in OTO where oh, did you have your vision with Isis yet? Oh, you didn't get there? Okay, well, first you're going to have a vision with like Malkuth or something, and then you'll get to Isis. It's almost like you're playing a video game and the guy in front of you has been through all the checkpoints and he's like letting you know how to beat the level or something. There's something appealing to that, though. Like, who doesn't like catching Pokemon?
Right. Hey. Did you know the Cerebus? It's behind the hospital in the backyard if you want to catch it. Yeah, now we got, which any that whoop, 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 I apologize for. There's a fire down the hill, literally right down in the town I live next to is on fire. Like there was a fire on both sides of the town. Oof, yikes. So they're trying to put that out currently. So there's some fire planes and choppers going by occasionally. That's my bad.
Speaking of fire, when you were talking about the story of Odin, where he goes to like one of his sons' house to see how crappy of a host he is, and they end up lighting him on fire for 3 days. Is there an astrotheological or alchemical interpretation of that being on fire for 3 days in that particular story?
I have not worked through that one, but I would almost guarantee it. I hadn't given that one, and because anytime you're doing that, and there's more than a few that I've pieced together as alchemical stories, that is not one of them that I've picked up yet. But I can guarantee it because there's a reason that he's on fire for 3 days. That's a fact.
Yeah, I like the way that you think, because even as you were describing earlier about knowing about the nuts and the bolts versus the lacquer, or even as you were describing the heart, and where you've got one part that's breaking things down through oxidization, the oxygen versus like I kind of like imagine that you have an alchemical line of thinking when most stuff comes up. It just naturally goes through that filter. So let's talk about the alchemy of marijuana a little bit. So I assume that this is some marijuana right here for educational purposes. No,
actually, just a cigarette.
No high on your own supply.
No, it's just a rollie this time. I took a dab beforehand. I actually don't really smoke much, just plain flower. And this was years ago, actually, I switched to just straight dabbing. And I remember the weekend I did it, I was in Colorado Springs, and we went and we smoked a bunch of joints and smoked cigarettes, so the cigarettes were definitely part of it. And we went back to the hotel room, and just 2 beds, and it sounded like Darth Vader sleeping next to Darth Vader, just like. And then the next day, for whatever reason, we did nothing but dab, and just whatever was going on available, and that was a dabbing day. And that night, we both were breathing really nice and easy. And literally the plant material, the thing that you're trying to get at is the oil, and the carbon, the plant material, that's actually not that great. So I just dab myself. I don't usually smoke actual flower too often. Dabs are the absolute cat's ass, especially if you're going to use a whole lot.
Same here, man. Like, now whenever flower is getting passed around and you want to be a good host / visitor, it's like you partake, but yes. All I can taste is just burning plant matter. I'm just tasting chlorophyll that's burning up and plant cells, and that's not the fun part. But they're also, I'll run into people that I don't know which side is the purist. I almost feel like dab only would be the real purist side. But there's sort of a purist mentality when it comes to people that use flower. And I'll sort of lead this into another question that I think is kind of related. And this is when you get into this like entourage effect, holistic way of thinking. So you're nodding that like what entourage. So the way that I've understood entourage effect is that whatever terpenes come along with the extract when you're pushing out, you can just make straight up THC distillate that is just THC by itself, no CBD, no CBG, CD, all the other acronyms, and none of the different terpenes that give it its smell and its flavor. So I guess like the ultimate scientific agnostic way of thinking is that THC is just THC, and no matter what you flavor it with, it has its own effect. And then I guess the entourage effect is, as I've heard it described to me, pseudoscience, where there's not necessarily proof that having all these different terpenes along with the THC has any substantial difference from it. I'm not saying that's what I believe, but that's absolutely how it's been presented to me, is that the whole entourage effect is might as well just being like, think good thoughts, or drink pineapple juice before you smoke or something, because it'll enhance it somehow.
So we're going to get real alchemical with this one. When you look at the oils, and the terpene level is the most volatile level. And so it literally is meant to burn off much easier. So like, I know you're a dirty meat eater who likes to barbecue. Burn. I'll
get what's coming to me one day. Heart disease, probably.
Yeah. Burn. It's my bad. My bad. I get out of control.
What else? Sushi.
But so when you start cooking that off in that oil, literally, which is what you're smelling is vaporized oil, is what happens. Your mouth starts watering, your stomach starts gurgling, like you weren't hungry before, but now you're fucking hungry, and it starts releasing bile and doing all the things that your body wants to do, because you desperately want to put that in your mouth and start processing it. And your body goes through a whole series of reactions just by the smelling of that oil. The same thing happens with anything that you smell like that. There are certain things you smell, you really want to put them in your mouth, and then certain things you're like, no, I would not do that. Why would I do that? Just the way it is. And so this is choosing also on a more minute level the different pathways that these things are going to take. And so where the way it's going to connect and fulfill your body. And this is one of the things that in my opinion, medical science in general doesn't really have an understanding of yet. They're starting to get it, and they're starting to get it not necessarily because of humans, but because of things like taking crystallized carbon rather than organic carbon. And when you just put crystallized carbon, which at the end of the day, or not carbon, nitrogen, that's my bad. Fill in nitrogen for the last couple words where I said carbon. When you're looking at crystallized nitrogen, like even if you make crystallized nitrogen from organic means, putting crystallized nitrogen in a non-organic nitrogen directly into the soil has horrible consequences. It tears the soil biome all to shit. And they're figuring that out, that there's certain things that without a counterpart that makes them work, they just don't quite work the same. And it doesn't chemically make sense, because why can't I just take this chemical exact molecular match and just put it in? Why do I need these other things going on? And so they're starting to figure it out. But that absolutely is going to choose the different pathways. And you think about it, like even when you're walking along and all of a sudden you smell like a certain smell, and all of a sudden you're in a very specific mood. A lot of times you can bring back certain memories from different experiences you had when you smelled that smell last. And you all of a sudden are in that place, in that mood, the whole nine. So all these things are what the terpene is doing. And as it was explained to you, the THC is just basically the raw bang. But the bang needs to be placed. What pathway is this bang going to take? How is this going to function? And that's what's getting picked out by the different terpenes. Actually, straight as a manufacturer, when you make just straight, pure THC and you clear off all the terpenes, it doesn't taste good, it doesn't smell good, and it doesn't really seem to get you high, which is the weirdest thing you can imagine. You can get a big, chunky, clear white diamond, go down to one of the shows and get one of those, take a big old fat dab of it, and you would think you would just be blasted off like you just drank Everclear. And no, you're not. It's like it's got no idea of what it needs to do, so it's not really doing what it should.
This isn't something I've heard. I'm just putting things together and like in an alchemical experimental way. But let's say entourage effect is real, kind of how you're describing it, that it determines what pathway something is going to go down. And let's say that we're trying to create the most perfect super weed, whatever that might be in your mind. Is the way to approach that, would you have to make it so that the plant itself has all the terpenes and the ratios that you're looking for? Or could you sit down and be like, all right, a little bit of THC distillate, a little bit of CBD distillate, we'll throw in some pinene here, we'll throw in some lining. Like, can you create using like a mixture of all these different terpenes, let's say plant or even flower derived terpenes, so they're still coming from some version of it? Could you ever make something that would be like the perfect combination of terpenes and THC and all these different distillates versus like going for a plant that has that?
So you could literally do that and it will work. And alchemical equivalent to this is if you're going to take and do an extraction, old school extraction where you take alcohol and you put the plant in alcohol and soak it and get everything out and then distill out those pieces and burn down the plant matter, blah, blah, blah. The second best alcohol to use is to take red wine grapes and make a red wine, distill out the red wine 7 times. And after 7 times distilled red wine, then that is sufficient to do the alchemical extraction and you'll come up with a satisfactory product. With that said, it will never measure up to having fermented the original plant, used the alcohol produced from that ferment in order to do an extraction off of a fresh plant of the same plant, and then using that oil in order and breaking things down from there. It will never compete with that, which isn't to say it won't be satisfactory. And most people will never, because that is depending on the type of plant that you're making. It's got to be a pretty feminine plant in order to produce in order to produce quite a bit of alcohol. And it's got to be a pretty high sugar ratio plant, or at least something you can convert into sugars. So like even vodka, most vodka is not made out of potatoes, because potatoes, that's hard as hell to convert that starch, all that starch into a large amount of sugar. And then even then there's not much sugar in it to be had. By the time the conversion happens, it's depleted down pretty little. So that's more of a connoisseur. You're going to truly pay for that kind of attention unless you're doing it yourself. And I would take that metaphorically and hand it over the same to what you're talking about, where absolutely, and we've done this before, you get some shitty tasting dabs like diamonds, you can basically knock all the terpenes off them and throw it away because it tastes like ass, and then put some nice terpenes on it and nobody really notices. Like they can't really tell the difference. They think, wow, that's amazing.
Now tell me if I'm crazy, because sometimes, and maybe you have a better way of describing this. I'm using very limited terms and experiences, but sometimes when I get certain concentrates, I can almost visualize and taste and feel like a separation, as if like if you had like a mixed drink and you had it in ice, and then the ice starts to melt, the same way you're like, oh, I'm at the water level right here. And like you get little hints of the alcohol. And then as the water goes away, you get like the pure alcohol. I almost have that same feeling where it's like, and again, maybe I'm just like telling myself this, but it's like, these terpenes didn't come from this. The terpenes were added separately on top of this distillate. And I can almost feel like the gap between the two, where they aren't like holistically combined in some way.
100%, super easy to tell, because even unless you wash it with pentane, it's still, no matter what, is still going to have a residual of that terpene, and you just put enough on top of it of another one to override it. So you can absolutely tell, because the first thing, again, terpenes are so volatile that if you really want to do an excellent extraction and do it right, like, and capture those volatile terpenes, you need to harvest the plant before the sun, before just even the twilight, morning twilight hits the horizon. Because that smell in the morning when your garden smells all of a sudden crazy strong, and this applies for food gardens, flower gardens, whatever, how it's so much stronger. And then in the middle of, and then like toward the middle of the day, you can't really smell it unless you really get in there. That's because the terpenes have burnt off for the day and they build back up overnight, but they burnt off, and it takes nothing to burn those off. Just that early morning light will start burning off that level of terpenes. This drives me nuts with those cold dabbers. So they don't even understand. It's like, and I watch these kids, they'll burn off the terpenes, and because those burn off super easy, but THC requires like hundreds of degrees of temperature to burn off. So there'll be this clear pool in the bottom. Oh, that was the part that was going to get you high. And they'll wipe that out with a fucking Q-tip, and they think they're all super cool. And you're like, I could take like 50 hits a night. That's because you did not take any THC at all with your shit. You guys are weird as fuck.
Well, what is this? What is cold dabbing?
It's where they do a very low temp dab and basically burn off the THC or burn off the terpenes, and they'll just leave the THC in the bottom as a puddle, and they'll wipe that out with a Q-tip. And it's one of the weirdest shit and things I've ever seen.
So if you're dabbing right, should there not be any liquid left?
Nothing. It should be clean. If that dab was made right and clean, it should look like nothing ever happened in your nail. Like,
really, this is new to me. This is absolutely, because I guess I've been brought up to like do the whole low temp dab craze thing, where because it tastes better and it's supposed to last longer, and you can like dab for 10-15 minutes off of one instead of just like burning through one in a few seconds. And I guess the higher temperature ones, it's always like, well, that's where the carcinogens come from, and that's what makes you cough real hard, and it's unpleasant. So that you want the low temp dabs as opposed to a high temp dab. If I've been misled?
You've been horribly misled, and this is just a weird fashionable thing that's happened. And I tell you what, these kids today, it's like they are anti getting high, which is weird as shit to me. Like, everything they do is absolute stupidity. Like, the thing that's the most popular when you go to any of these big shows, the thing that's most popular is this shit that's bleached white, ran through CRC. And what the worst part about this is half these people running CRC, they're running that through cat litter or floor dry. And it just sucks any goodness clean out of the product. And then they punch that out. It looks white damn near to this level. Like, it should never look like that. It's got
I've seen it. I've seen the CRC you're talking about, but I guess I've always thought CRC was, someone screwed up their batch, and this is the only way to try and like reclaim it or fix it somehow.
If you got it from a dispensary, it was ran through CRC. It's the industry standard. It's they've got different various ones. Some of them pull out pesticides, herbicides, blah, blah, blah. Some of them are meant to take out more of the color, because in today's world, and here's a subject I really wanted to harp on, today's weed sucks ass. It sucks like sweaty.
Compared to what? Well, no, I assume we're not comparing
to 20 years ago.
70s?
Compared to 20 years ago. I wasn't smoking weed in the 70s. I didn't start smoking weed till the 90s. So, I was just a little kid in the 70s. 20 years ago, the weed was way better. And what happened was everybody moved to a visual spectrum. So it's like the taste and the smell and the high of it doesn't matter as much as the visuals of it. And so, gotta have that perps. Where's that perps? And when I was young, number one, you knew the purple stuff. That was like your daytime. I gotta walk around and act like a normie, and I don't want everybody to know I'm stoned. So I'm just gonna smoke some of that like purple Urkel or something like that, and get this super mellow, just knock the edge off, and I'm gonna go to work. And now that's what everybody's all about. And it's the Durban poison, and all those derivatives. Well, they've come up with these different strains, like and the one that I'm going to use that is it's a curse word in our house, gelato. And so gelato just infiltrated everything, and the oil that produces is black. It is just dark no matter what, and it does not crystallize for shit. It doesn't do anything for you. It smells like hay. It's just trash. And everybody just started breeding everything all together. And so imagine it, in like dog world, we had a bunch of people had pit bulls, and a bunch of people have German shepherds, and a bunch of people have labs, and a bunch of people have Saint Bernards. And all of a sudden, every asshole started just humping all these dogs crossed. And now that's all you got left. Like, there's nothing of the original dogs left. Everything is just a cross of these dogs. And some asshole went and brought a retarded pug to the party with its and its busted hip and runs into walls. And now that's crossed into all the dogs. That's gelato. That is gelato. It's crossed into all the dogs. Now they all are at least partially retarded and and useless. And that's the cannabis world that we live in now.
My friend actually has a pug named Gelato that he named after the strain.
And I did not know this.
You didn't know. I don't think I've told anyone that. It's kind of hilarious. So what's the right one? Let's say Gelato is the crappy one. What's the right? Is it something that came out of the 90s? Are we talking like New York Diesel or?
Yes.
Or what?
If we go back 25 years, even 25 years, you get back to the very original strains. You get back to your White Widows, your Sour Diesels, your Chem Dogs, this Afghani is basically 100% indica. Go ahead and take 2 puffs if you want to shit yourself and sleep on the couch for the next 4 hours. And this one over here is almost 100% sativa. If you want to dance around like a fairy and run outside and play in the woods for the next 6 hours, you'd go ahead and take some puffs of this one. And now everything is absolutely crossbred. There is no dominant indicas hardly. There is no dominant sativas. There is no, everything's got to have the purple in it. And a lot of this is because it's commercialized. So you imagine, just like with food, a purple potato, that stuff tastes like it's almost buttered already. Like, it is absolutely delicious immediately, but they're about this fucking big, and you get about 10, 15 of them per plant. That is not commercially viable. But you get a big old starchy, tastes like nothing but starch, Idaho potato like that. And now it takes like 10 of those to make a big old bag and commercially viable. And so this is the same thing going on in the cannabis industry. When I moved to California, clippers, the trimmers were making $250 a pound. Now cannabis sells for $250 a pound. Like that, you've got all these other outside jobs are all absolutely gone. So now you got to imagine that these growers are having to do, the people that are doing the growing are also doing the trimming, also doing all these other jobs that were sourced out, and all of that to get $250 a pound. So they're definitely growing the strains that are the easiest trimming, the easiest growing. They grow with a uniformity. And that's the whole thing is understanding that auto cloning is a huge thing at this point, or not auto cloning, auto femmes, because they don't want to go and have males and have to deal with all that. They want auto femmes, and they want them to start flowering the auto flowers So that way, when they're doing light depths, they can get 4 harvests out in a year instead of 1. But there's a degradation of the genetics and all of this that happens. So it's and then they want it to be sea green. So they want to be able to stack, like the greenhouse is up above me. They have 6 rows of plants stacked in this greenhouse. It's tight as you can believe. And it's perfect. Just like little branches, just dirt like cottontails, right? And just perfect rows. And that way they can actually deal with it. And so you lose out then on some of these weird, wild strains like gravity. Like back then, the gravity strain, where that thing looked like something out of a tropical forest. You're like, what the fuck is even happening here? And sour D, that grows 10 feet tall if you're at all any kind of a grower. And it's going to end up 7 feet wide. And it's going to have these big, weird branches. And it's going to have these long, larvae nuggets that take forever to trim. But you get this giant pile of them because they're larvae and don't have any kind of real density to them. It makes a giant bag just to come up with a pound. This is so much effort that in a commercialized world, that ain't happening. That's not happening. That was driven by that kind of thing, those kind of strains, and that kind of love and attention was only given by hippies that were growing 100 plants, hoping that the feds didn't come in, and 99 state level, 100's fed level, and growing 99 plants and walking around and singing songs to them. And and I fermented bananas and I jacked off, and on the full moon or the third moon, I put in some cinnamon, and I sacrificed my best brandy and I put it on the plants. And that guy, he took care of things, and he was willing to put in the effort to grow some things that were real amazing. And now it's all just how many dollars am I going to profit per pound? So I need to put in this much effort and keep my costs at this in order to get this percent. The guy there's a guy in between us in town. He sells 400,000 pounds a year. You think he gives a shit? As long as they're sparkly looking, as long as they're thick and they got good bag appeal, that's the thing. That's the driving factor of the market now is bag appeal. Then he don't care. And he can make $10 a pound when you sell 400,000 of them. That's $4 million.
I'm glad you mentioned the sativa and the indica and like all this hybrid stuff, because I'm not like when I was growing up, and I guess in like the heyday you're saying is like the 90s, essentially 90s, maybe early 2000s. But what I had access to was whatever was around, and there was no such thing as like, oh, do you have any sativa today? Do you have any indica today? It was just like, this is what you're gonna have for the next 3 months, and then when it's gone, who knows? And by the time that we're talking like 2010s around where it starts becoming legal, to now you can actually go into a store and be like, I want that one specifically and not that one over there. It was unheard of. Like drug dealers would come over and you're like, yeah, I'll wait for the next one. It was like whatever they had. So by that time, you're making it sound like it's already too late. By the time that there's a storefront, commercialization has already made, like if I'm pointing at the sativa or the indica, it's all just hybrid at a certain level, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and it's shit growing. They use this PGRs in order to falsely make the bud hard and filled in. And then they use things that make them very shiny and crystally. And gelato and runts are my best examples of this. So you can take, and they'll tell you that here's another little trick that I'd like to talk about. You send it to these labs and they tell you it has a certain percentage. And look, this has got 30% THC. Stop and think about that for a second, motherfuckers. Use your brain. If this thing has 30% liquid in it, I should basically be able to go like this and like an apple or an orange or something. That's squeeze out some juice. And you end up, when you go and do an extraction, I've never personally did an extraction that pulled 30%. I don't give a fuck what you do. I don't care if you do.
THC is liquid or it's the oil. What about when you see
it's the oil?
What
It's
about
the
when
oil.
you see like THC distillate powder, which has all the liquid removed from it? That is still THC though, right? In a crystalline form?
Yeah, you've just brought it down to a crystalline form. I mean, obviously you realize that like even like diamonds or whatever else, even though you can pick it up like a piece of salt, you put some heat to it. And this is how you can tell whether something's masculine or feminine as an alchemist. If I put heat to it, what's the reaction? Does it vaporize? Does it turn liquid and then turn into vapor and vaporize? Or is it like a mineral, like an actual salt crystal where I can hit it with heat and it'll start glowing, and I pull the heat away and there it is sitting right there. It does. And actually in alchemy, you absolutely use fire in order to bring the salt side together. That's what's crystallizing and forming that salt side is your firing and your cooling. And so the masculine side of things, and this is, just a metaphor for life, like the masculine, you put a masculine under stress, we rise. That's why men like living in very Spartan conditions. You put women in Spartan conditions and put them under fire. Well, a woman scorned never returns. Don't scorch your oil, boys. It doesn't ever taste good after. It's never right again. You put women to fire, they don't like that. It's not that they're the gentle side.
You were also mentioned the word strain a few times. And man, I gotta say, I probably just live around like the bad kind of new age hippies when it comes to this, because I haven't been like physically hit, but I've felt like an offense when I said strain in certain contexts, and I'll hear like, don't call them strains. Strains are for poisons and strains are for viruses. We call them variants, or we call them, like you're rolling your eyes. So I feel like I know your opinion of this. Have you come across this before? Someone that doesn't want you to use the word strain?
I have not, but I'm in Northern California. So if I was to go down to an LA show or something like that, I certainly would probably run across that kind of thing where, wow, this just goes to what we started out the show talking about with the whole verbal thing. And it's interesting because like even myself, just in one generation, when I was a kid, we used to watch Flintstones, and at the end of Flintstones, we'll have a gay old time. And now something gay is either bad or homosexual. Like in no way does that equate into you wanting to have a gay old time with your friends. Like, well, unless you're homosexual, I guess. I don't know.
No, Fred was always with Barney, and Wilma was always with Betty. Like they
right.
The couples were never together. It was always the two guys or the two girls.
To me, that's and I think that only in today's, I think this is honestly a consequence of mixing the workplace where that's become co-ed basically, where you've got both sexes. I think so when I was growing up out in the farm areas where things are behind 20, 30 years, it was absolutely more normal for you not to spend your time around the wife. Like you would have specific times in the evenings and specific things, but you didn't spend your general time. Like if you were with the guys, like at my house, even right now, if you were to show up at my house within minutes of being at the house, we would up and leave the fucking house. Like we would go outside, go find some kind of task to do and mess around and
have a gay old time.
Have a gay old time, smoke some joints. We'll do some dabs because Thomas and I don't smoke joints. So we just do up some dabs and then, hey, you want to go down here and do this? Yeah, let's do that.
I'll do it to be polite, but like, I don't enjoy it as much as I could.
See, and for me, I don't enjoy sitting around talking like a Nancy. Like I would rather go do some kind of a task. I actually feel a little bit uncomfortable just sitting there with people. And if you get up but I'll have a good old time. You get up and you want to go out and do a brake job on my truck? Fuck yeah, let's go get them brakes done. And that's what the guys do. And then the girls make some supper and make us special treats because we're out there working like men. And Then you come in and you did a good job and you feel good. And the women are like, oh, you're man. And they give you kisses. And then they give you like some banana bread and, you know, and life's good.
Is RSO bullshit and RSO Rick Simpson oil. And I mean, it's clearly potent, but it has some pretty wild claims that get associated with it. I think that the origins of Rick Simpson oil is that he claimed to have some kind of a tumors on his skin or some kind of skin cancer, and then put RSO oil directly on it and claimed that cleared it up. And ever since then, it's kind of suggested as this miracle drug in a way. Is there anything behind all that?
Absolutely. And this is a super interesting subject. The reason RSO has medical abilities is because it's a shitty extraction. So the original extraction of RSO was a naphtha extraction, which is garbage. You're pulling out all the bad stuff with it, all the nasty. And then the naphtha in and of itself kind of does a molecular exchange. Like, you're never going to clean that up correctly. And so, but with the way that extraction is happening, what's going on is you're also leaving the salts in your product. So it's a very unclean extraction. Now, if you do a clean making dabs, no matter what level it is, if it's clean, there shouldn't be any plant matter left in that. Like I said, a real super clean dab that's done well, there shouldn't, your nail should look the same when you're done as before you started. Like,
no Q-tip involved?
No Q-tip. If there's a Q-tip involved, you had some plant material in that. It wasn't it wasn't super clean. And so it'll leave a little blackness and whatnot in there. If I was to take and put just baby oil or olive oil in a pan and burn it off and let it vaporize, does that leave a whole bunch of black in there? No, it just vaporizes off the oil. So anything black that's in there was carbon bearing and was plant material. And so it wasn't obviously a very clean extraction. So, but you also don't usually have enough to have the salts in there. And also, unless you've done the alchemical marriage, the salts will drop and the oil will rise. It's only after the alchemical marriage that the two will have the opposing reactions, right? And so if it was me doing it, and the better way to do it is obviously making the stone of cannabis. But because there is the presence of the salts, so now just like when I was talking about the entourage effect earlier, those salts need a crystal cannot be processed by your body. That's a hard item. And so it needs to be dissolved into a liquid in order to make it bioavailable for you. And the liquid that's going to do that best is then the liquid from that plant, the THC, the terpenes. Dissolving that salt into that liquid's now going to make it bioavailable for you. And so in the Rick Simpson extraction, you have all those components and your body's processing them and using them to a very good ability, because that's what the human body's made to do. But when you do the full stone, the full alchemical process to it, you purify out the oil. And if it was me doing it, you're going to pick the plant before sunrise. And so it's going to contain all the sulfur, all the oil. It's going to be loaded down. And when you do this extraction, the way I like doing it is a frozen extraction. So rather than letting the plant dry out, which is how you would normally do it in order to get the water out, because there's three things that belong to the earth they aren't really part of you. They're part of you right now, but your true you, they aren't. And that's water, carbon, and cellular material. And those are the three things you're going to burn out of the plant. So the water's going to go first normally when you dry the plant out. Rather than dry it out, if you do extraction with certain hydrocarbon gases that are brought down into a liquid, they can pass through the water, frozen water, without grabbing it. And they will just bond to the oil, rip that out. So you can flash freeze the plant, then put it in a frozen tube and put frozen hydrocarbon gas over it in a liquid form. Butane is, in my opinion, probably the best, but propane works just about anything. And there's not really any molecular exchanges that happen at all. Super clean. And you pass it through there. Well, the oil that grabs then, it has an almost neon brilliance to it. Like when you go and look at it, you're like, wow. If it's a green plant. If it's a purple plant like gelato, that shit's black. I hate gelato. So it'll have this neon brilliance. If you do this same extraction process on a plant that's been dried, that neonness is gone. And for me, that's the life in the plant. And if you let it get older and older, it'll go from being like a gold yellow without that neon, and then it'll slowly turn into a red and then a black. And for me, and you can remove that through the distillation process and through the CRC process and still pull out the THC, still pull out some terpenes, things like that. Well, for me, this is the sulfur component. This is the life, the freshness of it. And so then you would take and burn down the salt side and do a salt leaching on it. Burn it down to pure white ash and keep that hot so that way the crystals form back together. And then you mix that with distilled water because you don't want salts from something else and you're added into it. And so
you're talking about the lesser work here, right? In herbal stone. Yes.
And so you get the salts purified out of it. Now you've got this oil that's bearing the super lively sulfur. You put that back in a flask by itself, and through that oil, the sulfur enlivens the salt, because the salt and the sulfur were always one thing. That's the polarized masculine that's been broken and polarized against itself, and through the feminine oil, that is able to realign and become one. And this is why the stone of the cannabis is going to be able to do what the salt side does, which is take on a hard form, but also it will vaporize like the oil side does. So now that you've made it into the stone, if you put that on a dabber, you can literally inhale salt because it's now been married to itself. And you can now vaporize it. So this is going to be a much cleaner version than what the Rick Simpson oil is doing. But understand that the oil opens up the pathways and the salt is what gives it the punch. When you're looking at it electrically, the salt is your ground. The oil is your positive. And if you don't have that ground, this isn't really doing anything. And so the salt needs to come in now that you've made those cannabinoid connections and those pathways are wide open. Fuck you, fly. The pathways are wide open. You put in that salt, you put that charge through there, and now you've got actual healing power, as opposed to taking dabs, which don't really have the same healing factor to it in any way.
How come we don't see herbal stones in dispensaries?
They would, number one, call everything I just said pseudoscience, because somebody hasn't paid a shit ton of money to prove what I'm talking about and paid to have these giant scientific studies. And anybody that is interested in it, like myself, I don't know, maybe you have some billionaire patrons that would like to, donate to see this kind of thing happen.
Yeah, we got a few of them. Go ahead, pitch to them.
To see this kind of thing happen and see the legitimacy of this tested and brought forward. then but until then, it's going to remain a pseudoscience. But the difference is, the fact is you're going to notice through your own efficacy of it, through the results. I'll get a hold of you and we'll hook up at some other point in time, and you can try the difference between the dabs that are ran through a CRC and stuff that's done right and clean. And you think dabbing the first time was a fucking was a insane
I legitimately was ready to go to the hospital the very first time. And I know how silly or lame that might sound, but I was with me and my one of my best friends. I was his best man at his wedding, and he has like done everything you could name, like everything under the sun, but we hadn't really done dabs that much. And I think we just had like 1 gram of dabs that we pressed ourselves out of some old flour. And we were just like, let's just see. I've heard stories that this is pretty powerful. Let's just see how far we can push it. And I think we maybe knocked out about 70% of this 1 gram. And we're in the back of the car and our girlfriends are driving somewhere. It's like 2 hours after. And he looks at me and he's like, dude, I think I need to go to the hospital. And I was just like, I'm so glad you said that, because I also feel, but like we knew, like we've been alive long enough that you know that when someone says that, you're like, like lightweight over here wants to go to the hospital. So you know it's not rational. But I legitimately was like, we might actually die tonight. Like I feel like we're approaching death, not ego death, but like we're actually gonna die.
I've seen so many reactions like that, so many,
and it was just that one time, and it was almost like after that one experience, our tolerances just shot through the roof, and it never happened again. Never even came close to that.
100%, yeah, chasing the dragon, right? Chasing the dragon.
I don't want to chase that dragon. It wasn't like a fun. We're going to the hospital. It was a terrifying version.
I had a friend that hid in his doghouse. I have no fucking idea why he would not come out of his doghouse is outside. He's hiding in that son of a bitch. You're like, why are you hiding in there? I'm not hiding. You've never hung out in the doghouse before. Like, this isn't a normal reaction. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It's almost as bad as the salvia. Dude, me and you are on the same wavelength here, because like as you're saying something, I'm like, oh man, I need to ask about salvia. And then you just bring it up anyways. So like, what's your experience with salvia? Can we make an herbal stone of salvia? Oh God, that is so fucking scary. I tried 80X one time, and it made time stop. Like, and I could feel every little thing going on in my body, and all of a sudden I had to pee, and I had to feel that pee like make its way, and it was just like and it took me forever to get in the bathroom, and then I'm standing there, dick in hand, and I can feel it just crawling its way through every little tube all the way down. And then just as it finally breaks free, and it's doing it so slowly that it's not like you get that instant relief that you normally get, or after like a half a second.
You're having to like think it through, in each of those chambers.
Yes. And right as it starts streaming, I had a ferret, and the ferret jumps up and sticks its head in the stream, and I had to pinch it off. Oh no. And and that whole thing lasted a lifetime. It was horrible.
You were talking before about how smells can teleport you back to memory. That's because the olfactory gland is like the most directly connected to the brain, and I think some of it doesn't go through the same neural pathways. Like it skips some of the logic nodes where you don't have to piece it together. It's just like, bam, here's this memory. I would almost say that pinching it off is probably even a little bit higher than the olfactory memory. It'll bring you right back to like the times when
it's the worst. It is just the worst. You're like, oh God, the relief now instead of relief, it like hurts twice as bad. It's like angry, like I was almost there. Now my pain receptors are now angry. Oh, I took a medication back in the 90s. I think I got bronchitis, and they gave me something, and whatever it was, and they're constantly changing meds. This one made it so I couldn't hold my pee. And it was horrible. And I lived in Richfield, the first city south of Minneapolis. Like the only thing that separated Richfield and Minneapolis was 66th Street. And fucking, I'm driving around and like every 10 blocks or 15 blocks, I'm having to pull off. I pulled off and pissed in a church parking lot. And I remember thinking, I hope that this doesn't get me struck down or something. I'm out just pissing in. I couldn't help it. Just like throw it in park and just, you can't get it out fast enough because there was zero retention ability.
What do you think about like breatharianism, where you just consume light and you no longer consume food or liquids, and that being the next step in evolution, that you don't poop or pee?
I think those people are nuts, to be honest. I think they're nuts. I think that the human body, and I know this, let's start out with a few facts. Like, because we live in such a pampered, privileged, your average poor person today lives better than a king did 200 years ago.
Right. They couldn't put the AC on. They couldn't go to the fridge and grab a banana whenever they wanted. Yeah.
Yeah. Like who the hell was it that there was some like Alexander the Great or something? He said he ate like 2 foods and now he could die. Like, like you go into my spice cabinet, there's spices from every country of the damn world of some sort, or salt or oil or whatever. Like, this was absolutely never available. Just the taste of something caused whole giant wars where people slaughtered each other just to have a tea or a spice or something like that. Like, you got some good tasting shit, we're going to fight you for it. Like, these ideas are so very foreign to us, and we live so damn pampered and privileged. Where the fuck did this start?
We're talking about the different variety. This actually brings me back to like that whole entourage terpene thing that I asked when we first started talking about this, because I imagine that combination of different flavors and smells and everything. It's almost like one of those freestyle machines at like the gas station where you can like fill it up with a little bit of root beer and then put in a little bit of Sprite, and like you can do like a suicide in there. And then certain restaurants or like gas stations will have their own ratios of how much sugar to how much flavor and all this, where you can kind of make any different combination that you want, any flavor, any scent. And I'm just wonder, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Like, is that pampering us in a bad way, and now we're never going to know what a true sativa is because we've got sort of like freestyle machines?
Yeah, everything is a suicide slush now. Everything, and it is so gross. And you always puked after you drank one of those. You should remember that. Like, just a pile of different corn syrups and terpenes, and then you ran for 2 minutes, and then you puked it all back up. Yeah, this was not a good thing to do. We're at this really weird level where everything's pampered, like I said, and everything's mixed, and there's reasons that people in these different areas had their food is slightly different than ours. They're like, take hot peppers. I cannot, the difference between me eating the exact same hot pepper in the middle of winter and in the middle of summer, 2 entirely different reactions. Entirely different.
Interesting. I'm in Florida, so I don't know what that means. I don't have a winter or summer.
Yeah, so you guys are just eating hot peppers all the time. In the middle of winter, hot peppers are hotter for some reason. It's hard to put a lot of heat on your food. And so if you're from cold areas, there's just variances in the foods. And back then, it was all landrace strains. And it was exciting when Jack Herrera and Sensi Star went to these different areas and got the different land races and crossed them once and made a new thing. And it was all real neat. And they ran with that for, 20, 30 years. That's back in the 60s that Herrera and Sensi Star were back doing this. And now they've just crossed every single thing all together. And absolutely, it's just degraded the quality of it. And if you imagine it, it's no different than a dog. There's a reason that nobody's like, my mutt is so awesome. Like, it's a mutt. It's in any kind of an animal in the world. If you had a purebred papered something, that is worth vastly more, sold easier, the whole nine, as opposed to your mixed breed. Nobody cares about, you might have let this hump on it and this. You didn't actually craft the genetics of it in order to get specific reactions and specific tastes. At this point, and especially with everybody growing in these light depth greenhouses, you walk up to a table, they have 20 different names on that table. You smell the jars, blind taste test. They were all kind of the same. They were all vaguely the same. All the extractions are done. Basically, your dispensary extractions are almost all done with CO2. All I can taste is CO2 and a CO2 extraction. All I can smell in a greenhouse stuff is hay. It all smells like hay, because they've mixed and crossed every single thing that they could possibly cross. It's like I said, like a group of people took all the best dogs in the world, made them all fuck, and now they're all running around with retarded pug-eyed dogs, and they're like, oh, this was an awesome dog.
Is this like high-end weed connoisseurism, a gateway drug to eugenics?
Dude, the conversation, and I drag that conversation there when I'm trying to explain different concepts in eugenics all the time, because that is such a touchy field. And actually the last episode of Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes, that was a huge subject, which started out with talking about inbreeding. And anybody that understands genetics understands that what most people think inbreeding causes is not correct. Like, it doesn't, if two people with no Down syndrome in their genetic line, even if they're closely related, have a kid, Down syndrome doesn't just appear, this kid's 3-eyed and everything else. That's not how that works. Now, if you crossbreed too closely back against each other over and over, eventually there is definitely a degradation of the genetic line, which is usually, I think, 7 back crosses against itself. But if you do, I don't care whether it's animals or plants, if you're trying to stabilize a specific gene, you stabilize it by breeding it against itself. And you do that quite a few times before you start getting any kind of uniformity. Like when you're looking at cannabis, if I like the first people, and these kids today that do the breeding, they just, I like this strain, and let's put them together. I'll make a great one. And that's happened like 80 times now for the last 20 years. But if you said, I like blueberry, but I also, the blueberry doesn't have that high a THC. It does, but let's pretend like it doesn't. It has a higher THC, and I want to take and cross it with Sensi Star, which is like frosty as fuck, but tastes like ass. So I will breed those two. And the first batch of seeds out of that breeding is called an F1 hybrid. And an F1 hybrid is your fastest growing seed, and it's wild. And out of those seeds, you're probably going to have 200 variances that are slightly different. And this is part of why when you're looking at like gelato, what is it? Gelato 44 and like 32 or some shit that are the popular ones. That was the number of seed. So in that, there was 2 of them. There was 32 was the good one. That had the qualities that I was seeking in this strain. 1 through 10 were retarded. I didn't really like them. They didn't smell great, taste great. This one, was smelled great, but it had no THC, blah, blah, blah. This one is the best of what I wanted. And then this one over here, which is direct brother and sister, is also the best of what I wanted. Now I'm going to hump them together. And now those two that have fairly similar genetics are going to produce more uniformity. And so in that, you're going to take the best examples of that, crossbreed them again. And right around then, you're going to start achieving some real uniformity where you can say, hey, if I hand you this seed, the plant's going to grow under normal conditions. The plant's going to grow approximately this tall. It's going to produce approximately this much weight. It's going to have this particular smell and taste. It's going to give you this kind of a high reaction, but that's only because you've now stabilized that strain.
And this is like would you call that F2 and F3 every time you do that?
And then eventually you have a stabilized strain, and now this stabilized strain you can name. And I want to name this, there's somebody that unicorn poop a couple of years ago. So I'm going to call this unicorn poop. And when I sell you this unicorn poop seed and I show you this picture, it should be able to list the description, and you should be able to at home under decent conditions produce approximately what this says, because it's a stabilized strain. Now, as soon as you go back and crossbreed, you're back to that entire game again. So if you do a singular, you just want a bag of seeds, you crossbreed 2 plants, you take the bag of seeds, you're going to be shocked by the variances that come out of it. Some of the plants are going to turn out great. Some of them are going to just be horse shit. You're going to be like, how are these even related? Well, it's no different than, 2 people that are very different racially punching out kids. Some of them are going to look more like this, and some of them are going to look more like that. One might be, let's say it's a darker person and a whiter person. 2 of the kids might even be dark and white. Like, there's going to be just vast variances because the genetics is not stable.
And it sounds like when you're talking about, like, come up with a number, gelato 32, whatever the numbers are, that's also assuming that the person that did that first F1 even knows what the hell they're looking for. So like their version of what's good is, it's pretty and it has more crystals on it and it smells a certain way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it was the best out of the 200 different variations, right?
That's exactly correct. And in today's commercialized world, the best parts of it are not the important ones. Does it produce a nice fat uniform bud that is easy to trim, like Girl Scout cookies? That's going to produce like a big thick Christmas tree. You're going to knock off like 4 fan leaves and that thing's good to go. You take Sour D, you're sitting there with a larfy little piece of shit for half an hour trying to get off all these little fan leaves and get all these duck feet out of there, and it sucks. Like, and it's to get the exact same money per pound, actually maybe even less, because people will look at the bag appeal and go, oh no, I like these nice big fat thick uniform buds with a nice crystal coating, which doesn't really represent the oil, because people think that crystal, it means oil, and it doesn't. That crystal housing can be completely empty, I promise.
You talking about the trichromes?
Yeah, they can be completely empty. Like if you do a good extraction, you pull it out, it almost looks like it did when you put it in. You're like, wow, it's still all crystally, but all the oil is gone, and that oil is what's doing the job, not that crystal tower.
Here, I want to get your hot take on this too. I'll start to aim this towards an end at some point too. So if I were to go to a dispensary right now, there are so many forms and factors that I could get into. You've got like your shatter, you've got your butter, you've got your rosin, you've got your like cold pressed rosin, you've got the RSO that we mentioned. Now they've even got ones like they'll call it flan, I don't really know what the difference between all these is other than consistency. I've heard that, for example, butter is really, or batter. There's butter, there's batter, there's flan. That butter is just someone just whips up shatter with a little bit of extra terpenes maybe added to it. No, like how?
So you start out, let's say I fill up a tube and I take a shaker can of some medical grade butane and I blast it through that tube into a clear Pyrex dish, right? Which was the way we did it, 25 years ago.
And then do you put this into a vacuum chamber in order to purge the rest of the butane out, or is that?
Yes, at some point here. So then what they're going to call this, just that, is going to be called crude oil. So now it's still got impurities. It's still kind of nasty. If you take and you just whip that, it'll end up turning into either you call it butter or batter, or earwax was the original name back in the day. And then you put it in a vacuum chamber for a day, let it pull off the butane. This is going to be let's equate that into like normal butter. Okay. So literally you've kind of just made butter. Then if you want to change butter into ghee, and so in THC terms, this is going to be shatter. Now you're going to put that into some heat. And what that heat is going to do is allow these THC crystals to start moving around and be able to start aligning themselves and the interlocking. And it's also, if you've got some lipids in there, which a lot of people do, unless you do a frozen extraction, you're definitely going to be extracting out some fats and lipids. So just like butter, it's going to clarify it. And this is where I'm talking about, like, it's like ghee, where now the fats and lipids are gone, but the good oily part's still there. And so when you're making either taffy's like a halfway between shatter and butter, where it's kind of still got a softer consistency, but it's not really as clarified. Where good shatter, it's called shatter for a reason. It's like hard candy. And so that means it's completely clarified. The molecules have now just locked back in with each other and made like a nice hard sheet. Okay. Now to get an upgrade from that is you're talking diamonds. And so with diamonds, instead of doing like going through that process like that, you leave it. It's amazing that my daughter and my dad can both so regularly message when I'm on a show or call.
Yeah, we're talking about diamonds, Dad.
Yeah. And she wants to talk to me about my grandson. Like, my grandkids gotta have the weirdest stories from my grandpa. He's almost he's almost in junior high. Like, so with diamonds, instead of doing that heating up and getting them to lock together in a sheet like that, you're going to leave this in a more the solvent in there. So it's going to make a slurry. And then you're going to use time to affect. So when it's in this slurry, what's going to happen is the heaviest parts are going to drop down and it's going to make layers. And so the heaviest part, which is your THC, is going to drop to the bottom and it's going to make a nice little cloud in the bottom. And then the more colorful part, which is going to be your terpene layers and your CBD in between there, they're going to push up and the CBD will end up above the THC and the terpenes will start floating right to the top. And above that, the actual solvent will start pushing up and out because the solvent's lighter than anything else. And so you put it in a sealed container and every day you just burp that solvent out. And what that does is allow a slow alignment process of these molecules, because now that the solvent's up and out, they start moving together. And especially if you take a seed crystal and drop it in there, that seed crystal is like a guide and it tells that THC, it's like, hey, do this, man. And they're like, oh yeah, cool. That's what we'll do. And it starts forming itself into its plutonic solid form. And so them diamonds will start forming as its THC is pulling together. And every time you burp out some of that, whether it's propane, butane, whatever, that's going to just lock in. And it takes a long time for those to stay in a nice plutonic solid. So you want to, the speed is getting set by every burp. When you burp, it allows more of this gas trapped in the slurry to come out, but only until it reaches a certain pressure inside that jar. And then the rest will stay locked in. So every time you depressurize the jar and break the atmosphere, it starts allowing more to leave the atmosphere, similar to the way that at room temperature, you can put water in a vacuum chamber and it'll start boiling the water and the water will start evaporating, even though it's only at room temperature, because you've removed the overhead pressure, which was making it so it would only evaporate at that temperature. Once you remove that pressure, it doesn't need that temperature to make the conversion.
So once you've got like a nice clean ghee or shatter, which has removed all the lipids and everything, You almost mentioned an upgrade from there, or to elevate it from there. What are you getting out of crystal that you're not getting out of shatter?
There is something about putting it into that plutonic solid that makes it infinitely stronger. It is absolutely crazy. And I know that there's been other things, like when you look at it, like look at Breaking Bad, when he's like, they're making their meth, and he's like, and when it came out in crystal shards, he's like, oh my God, the shards, like that's the, and that is, it's because if it crystallizes like that, it's like the most extreme purity of something. Even when you look at an actual crystal, you can buy like emerald for almost nothing when it's just like in a blob, and you're just like, and there's other shit mixed into it and whatnot. But when you get a pure formed crystalline emerald piece, that's worth an absolute mint. And you're like, oh my God, look at that. Your body does the exact same thing. So when you can bring it to that crystalline level like that, the effect of it, shocking compared to the effect of shatter, the effect of butter. Butter definitely doesn't affect, that's like a quarter strength. Like all those fats and lipids, they aren't doing anything extra for you. Like that's
you're paying extra for it.
Yeah, you're just paying extra for it. It's like the difference between going and buying I'm from a Bible Beltish area. When I was in high school, we had in Minnesota, we had 3.2 alcohol, where if you went to the store, you could only get 3.2 beer, 3.2%, and it's like comparing that to where shatter, or diamonds is like Everclear. Like all the nasty's gone. You are getting nothing but smoking punch.
Well, clear this up for me, because I guess this is probably a false assumption on my part, that when you start harvesting these crystals and they've separated from terpenes, how is that different than going after, say, like THC distillate, where it's just been completely isolated away from everything else? Like, are there still substantial amounts of terpenes in the crystals, or does the crystal kick all the terpenes out?
No, it definitely doesn't kick them all out. There's definitely a bond in there. You in fact, also, as that's happening like that, you can see like there's a slight yellow to the crystals, unless you're doing it with pentane, which will literally bond away that terpene levels. Also, pentane gets used if you get a bad extraction, which has like a bunch of chlorophyll in it and whatnot, because you're ideally not grabbing onto that. Like if you use like that's definitely coming with your RSO, especially if you use the naphtha for the extraction. You're definitely getting a bunch of chlorophyll in there. But it's going to maintain a real nice, brilliant yellow to it. Is your best crystals. They're going to be a clear, brilliant yellow and nice, with nice shardy edges to it. And that is going to give you this clean, happy, wonderful experience that everything else becomes a downgrade of that by far.
All right, last weed question, and then we're going to get into like a 20 questions kind of thing. It'll be a fast one.
But you're right.
What are like the Moby Dick strains out there? Like, are there any that are elusive that people have been trying to find? And like, I've heard classic New York Sour D being one of those examples. Another one, this is a Florida thing, so I don't even know if this is actually a strain or just a nickname, but there was something called Crippy in the 1990s that was like huge in Florida, and apparently like no one's been able to find it ever since. And I don't know if you ever heard of Crippy or not. Okay, it's definitely a regional thing, but it aside from being a nickname for just anything good, like at a certain point, anything good was just called hydro, regardless of how it was grown. It was like, oh, that's hydro, as if it like hydro were a strain, and it wasn't. But the opposite is true with Crippy. I think originally Crippy was a very specific strain, but then eventually people were just like, oh, do you have Crippy or do you just have mids? And it was kind of used as something that meant something. And then it just lost all meaning. Are there other strains out there that even if someone said they had it, you're like, bullshit, you don't have that. That doesn't exist anymore?
100%. 99% of the OG that you get out here, I know one of my friends was there when that bag was that they got those seeds out of from South America, that they started growing them. And OG stood for ocean grown because it was growing right here next to the ocean. Like, and that strain completely dead. Bubba, there's a reason that they was it pre-99 Bubba, the Bubba Kush.
They have in the dispensaries here, they sell stuff called Bubba 99 or Bubba pre-99.
Yep, and that's because everything produced since 99 is absolute trash. And they try to claim that theirs is the pre-Bubba because the old stoners all are like, yeah, the old before 99 Bubba was different. It was. And so that's all completely gone. You like you said, the diesels, that's been crossbred to shit where the original strains are gone. A lot of these people, they didn't take, and then where the biggest problem comes in is when they commercialized, a lot of these old guys that cared about things like that, they said fuck off, because they were getting, back in the day, I remember when anything growing out of California outdoor, if it was seedless, you were paying $5,000 to $7,000 a pound for it, like straight out. And those guys back then, they were willing to do whatever and put in every bit of effort to maintain these kind of things. Once you're talking, I'm only going to get $250 for a pound. Oh, now you're in an entirely different world on how much attention I'm going to put into this kind of a procedure.
But wouldn't there be a market for someone that's like, hey, I'm Bitcoin millionaire or billionaire, and I want some true Bubba pre-99, or I want some true OG or some actual diesel? Like, do those markets exist out there?
If you have that hookup, those things do exist 100%. If you have that hookup, and then everybody always thinks, oh, well, if I only knew some famous people, them fucking famous people want their shit for free. The privilege is hanging out with them. They expect you to give it to them. Like, that's your payment, is I'm cool, you're not, give me your stuff. Like, you aren't going to make it big off of hooking up with any famous people. Like, fucking, and then half the time, them famous people can't hang anyways. Like, one time I actually, was it like my 38th birthday or something? Whatever year MGK was rapper of the year, this girl that I was messing around with, wasn't married. This girl I was messing around with thought he was the greatest thing ever, blah, blah. And it wasn't something I gave a shit about, right? I don't know who the fuck this jackass is. Actually, I did know one song because when I was in prison, over weed, because South Dakota, they don't they do now. Now it's legal. But at one point it wasn't. But in the prison, they had BET, because the black people had to have a channel that was like theirs. And so they let BET, and that song would play on it, and it's all open cell prison. So like every TV in the fucking prison's playing it, and you couldn't help but that I'm a wild boy. So I go to this guy's concert with this girl, and I don't give a shit about this dude. So I'm off hanging out, doing whatever. And she's over here dancing, jumping around like an idiot. And there's three guys, and they got a joint, and they can't find a lighter. So I just reach into my pocket and hand them a lighter. And they're like, thanks, and then when the joint got down to my end, they handed it to me. I'm like, well, thanks, And well, we got kicked out of the concert by security. Well, these three guys were young, so they got into a fist fight with the security, and I just walked away and went right back in the front door and went back into the concert. And the MGK's manager saw that, and he's like, well, we're out of weed. Do you have any more weed? And I'm like, no, but I got dabs in my vehicle. It wasn't even my weed, but I got dabs. And so then he's like, well, you want to come hang out on the bus afterwards? And I'm like, well, yeah, this chick I'm with would really like that. So we get on the bus, and we're partying with the band, and he's the last person to show up, because he's in signing autographs and all that and doing interviews. And he comes into the bus, and somebody's coughing hard, and he's like, I want one of what he's having. And it was a nectar collector. So you can't even take a great hit with it. It's like a bitch ass nectar collector. And freaking this dude takes a hit, and he starts coughing so hard. And I reach out and I'm like, you're going to ruin the party. And I snatch that nectar collector out of his hand. And these two black guys grab him from around the sides because he just about pitched forward. And then they drug him out to the limousine. And that was the end of fucking MGK. And so then the girl that I was seeing, I'd go, I'm a wild boy. I'm a take one dab. When she listens to that song, she gets so mad. Like, wild. He's a wild one. Single dab, big. So
he's dabbing adrenochrome now.
Yeah, I might have started that. I might have fucked that guy up. I don't know. Hard dab will get you.
He was like, I need to start steering away from this rap thing, man. This is too hardcore for me.
Yeah. And like his whole band, except for one dude, was white dudes. And his brother was like 5. He's pretty tall, but his brother's like 5'6" or 5'7" and real femmy like him. And his brother took a dab, no problem though.
What about CBD? There's like, you can get CBD dog food now. There's like, I can go to the grocery store and get CBD gummies and stuff. Is it do anything? Is CBD do anything on its own?
CBD definitely has a mild effect on its own, mostly as an anti-inflammatory and things like that. What my big concern with this heavy push of it is that it's starting to grab onto salts, and it will grab on and sit in your liver and in your kidneys. So these people are taking and you got to imagine that the oil, like I said, this is literally like the positive and the negative is the salt. These two things go in conjunction. So you've put a whole bunch of ion side in it. Of course, it's going to draw cations. And that salt's going to come running. Then you put the milkshake in the yard. The boys are like, it's better than yours. And they just, come flying into the yard. And you don't put a bunch of milkshakes in the yard if you don't want the boys.
Is there any reason that you would dab CBD? If you didn't have like an inflammation that you were trying to treat?
For just a normal experience, I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't. Again, the plant, and this is something they're starting to learn, is these plants are meant to work, not just entourage effect with the THC, but the whole thing is very holistic, and certain pieces of the plant start reacting and making other pieces work differently. So, like I was explaining with alchemically, yeah, you can use red grape wine distilled out to do your extraction, but it's not going to touch doing it with the actual plant material. They're starting to realize that even if it's molecularly the same, it's not really the same. And they don't have an explanation for why at this point in time. But if you take out the THC of the cocktail and isolate it down to CBD, it's all right. But honestly, it's not helping people that much. It's certainly not having the RSO medicinal effects.
Is there such thing as like historical Nordic weed? Like I know like the berserker thing has been put on like Amanita muscaria or some other versions of like psychoactive substances, but is there any links to them smoking the ganj?
Not Northern Lights, baby.
Yeah, is that a Nordic thing?
That's from Alaska and whatnot. That's from the north. There's definitely strains that grow in those areas, and definitely there's been pipes found and whatnot that have residue in them. So 100% they enjoyed that. People act like this is some weird thing amongst humans. Oh, humans love getting high. Yeah, so does every other fucking animal on the planet. Dolphins will grab puffer fish and pass them around and scare the shit out of the fish and make it inject poison, and then they get high as hell. And reindeer, the Amanita muscaria, the reason reindeer fly is because they eat them things, and they like it so much that it's stronger when it's in their pee because their body's already partially processed it. So then they drink their own pee to get even higher. Like, it's just what animals do.
Yeah, that's one of the sacred mushroom in the cross, I guess, talking about from John Allegro, where he would talk about the shamans would be watching the reindeer eat these mushrooms and act crazy, and then eat the pea and act crazy. So then they would go and start eating the pea, and then they would act crazy. And then it just turned into like a big thing of reindeer eat mushroom, I eat reindeer pee, you eat my pee, and it just kind of goes. It almost turns into like a psychedelic box saga at a certain point.
Yes, and there are better ways to convert out some of the poisons in that Amanita muscaria, like boiling it and things like that. There's a way to prepare it.
It's not as fun though as hanging with the bros and just dabbling a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? It's like no matter where you go, it seems like, and I just can't, even with being a farm ass and consistently having to play with shit. Like just today, my plants are a little bit light green, so I went down to the chicken coop, got some chicken shit, and threw a whole bunch of chicken shit in the mix. And I got different flavors of poop around here, and I'm not drinking no pee. I did it accidentally the very first time I met a man of Volmer who is heavily into the piss drinking cult. And funny enough, I accidentally drank pee on the first time I met her. Christy and I, it was our honeymoon. So we did this whole cross country trip, and we stopped, and we had my one grandson with us when we started, and we dropped him off with his parents and visited him and the other grandkids and went sightseeing, and ended up, we were on the way to Niagara Falls. And then this whole trip, I've been finding different places that had fresh squeezed orange juice, and just drinking fresh squeezed orange juice is my favorite thing. And unpasteurized, the whole nine. And after about 10 days of drinking nothing but fresh squeezed orange juice, amazingly, your pee starts looking pretty much like fresh squeezed orange juice. And I was driving, and I'm a dude, so you just throw the bottle down, and then you stick it off to the side, and I happened to re-grab that bottle, and it looked pretty much like orange juice, and took a slug of that, and the wife was trying to yell stop at me right like mid like this, but it was already in the gullet. I had no choice. There it was, like in the gullet already. Like we're past the point of no return. And she's like, "Was that your pee?" And I'm like,
was that the first time that you met the Ascended Masters?
Yeah. That was when the Shambhala opened up, and and I learned different healing charms, and also I also am now monetarily rich. Because the money charms, those are the most popular. Also getting laid. My wife, who was already having gratuitous sex with me, continued to have gratuitous sex with me, thereby proving that this worked.
Julie, that piss breath is so hot.
Dude, goats get it on. like
I don't know if they're as discerning.
No, I did have a goat that would sit and hump the third seat out of a Tahoe that we just drug out into a field and would sit on occasionally. And he humped the hell out of that Tahoe seat. It was hilarious. I tried catching him on video, and I swear he had like some sixth sense where every time I would sneak over there with a camera, he'd be like, then he'd slowly back away from it, like, you motherfucker.
It's another version of the double slit experiment, right? That's the observer effect.
It's the goat hump experiment. Oh, God.
It's just macro and microcosm. That's all it is, man. As above, so below.
Yeah, we just had some nanny goats, and my wife was there when we first got our buck, Mr. Stinky. And he goes out there, and we let him out with the nanny goats. And Christy's like, "What's going to happen?" I'm like, "Well, until he pisses all over himself, nothing." And she's like, "What?" And she thought I was making fun of him, just pulling her leg. And the girls will not pay any attention to him, and he's out there for like an hour and a half running around, and the girls, they want nothing to do with him. And all of a sudden he pisses all over his face and in his mouth and rubs it all over, and then he goes over to the girls, he goes, "Nah!" And the girls run up.
Like, he's a bad boy.
Yeah, they start rubbing on him, and oh yeah.
I didn't think we were going to get into dating tips, but yeah, these are your free ones. I think we're going to have to hide the rest of those behind the Patreon wall.
It's what the beard is for. It's what the beard is for.
Soak up the Ascended Master serum.
Yes. If you want to meet Sanat Kumara and you want to change the world that we're in into nothing but love and peace, then why aren't you drinking your pee? I mean, what the fuck? Do you hate all of us? Do you want us to suffer?
If you had gun to head, someone was like, look, every day now for the rest of your life, we're going to switch up your diet. You're either drinking pee or you're doing Bach Saga. Which one would you gun to head are you doing?
Oh, I'm drinking pee every day. Every day. Like there is zero chance. Gun to head, Bach Saga is not happening. You and I are fighting. Like, I don't care. I'm going to go down blazing. I understand I'm going down like all them old 80s karate videos where they and take away the guns, not happening because all that dude has to do is go like this. Like, I understand I'm about to get it, but nah. And I remember when Bach Saga was fresh, I actually have had access to videos from Jim Chesner before he died that nobody else has heard or seen, because he came on Crow 777 and Crow's pretty conservative. And so after that, Rose did a interview wanting to go through all the material that Crow would not go through. And so straight from Jim Chesner, his like right hand pecker sucker, I heard the down and dirty of it. And it was like, whoa, this is, and honestly, what I believe that there is some actual realness to his stories. But I think that somewhere along the lines, this dude liked little boys and he destroyed his own family cosmology in order to have sex with young men.
Very European of him.
Yeah. Like, it's
good.
Like,
finish your thought.
Even when you break into the breeding rituals, it's super interesting. So, like, for my cosmology, I've alchemically been working on my own cosmology for a number of years now. And to me, we live in a galvanic cell battery, right? And in this galvanic cell battery, when we think about a battery, there's one anode and one cathode, but that's not really how the battery works. There's one main anode and one main cathode, but every plate in between is anodic and cathodic to each other. So this one is just slightly lesser than this one is slightly lesser. So when you look at the different metals, and especially when you look at the planets from an alchemist point of view, where they each have a metal, it actually goes in galvanic order, where each one is slightly less stable than the last one, where to the point where gold is the most cathodic and lead, it would be the most anodic. And so when you're looking at that, the lead is going to borrow to the next one and then borrow to the next one, because the way the battery works is this cation is drawing the anions, and so this one slightly depletes. Your anode is going to get smaller because it's going to get oxygenated, and every time there's an oxygenation and it breaks apart that molecule, then it's going to pass that charge on, and then it's going to get sucked up over here. But when that positive charge gets sucked up over here, it's going to grab on to that negative ion, and that is going to meet back over here with the positive, and this is going to grow. And it's suddenly going to turn from this metal to this metal, which is transmutation all on its own. Whatever the anion is turns into the cation material. And people don't want to recognize that transmutation. Like, it happens. So then you look at the planets, the moon is feeding the sun, but all these other things are feeding the moon. Then you look at the breeding cycle of the supposed breeding cycle of the Bach Saga, where the lower generals all nut into their hand or whatever and feed it to the next guy.
Shield. Don't be gross. They do it in a shield first, and then they drink it out of the shield.
My bad. They put up a geisha curtain and do it, onto the wall there. I don't know. And
it's classier than you're implying. It's like a very, Yeah.
Yeah, it's classy. That's why so many guys like Longo think it's great. You're
it's regal.
When you start justifying that, you are one step from a penis in your mouth. If that's
a classy penis in your mouth, though.
Yeah, it'll be classy.
It'll
have garnish. It'll have garnishes. They'll put the tasty lube on it. But the eventual end sequence is only one guy is allowed to impregnate the queen, the queen would be the sun. The sun is feminine and the moon is masculine. And so the moon impregnates the sun. This would be the same cycle. All these other things are feeding into the moon, and then the moon itself is putting that into the sun. So I could see where this could actually be a cosmology and match in astrotheology. And I think that there's sections in it where I can make that alchemically work out. But then there's a whole lot of touching younger men and swallowing and all that. And that's never fucking happening in my world.
Well, how else are you going to learn the alphabet?
Yeah, my mom taught me.
Well, technically, so did your box mom, but she just had a couple extra steps that most of us don't go through.
See, and how did she even do it? Because if the dad was dead and not passing down the story, and the story had moved over to the feminine side, and he's now picking it up from the feminine side, which is not supposed to be the carrier of said message, and you can only get it in all reality through the semen, how were you getting it? Like, does your mom like massive squirter or something? And dialing O on the little pink phone till you got a puddle, and then what's going on here?
Well, I mean, technically, according to the Bach saga, as I understand it, there's the masculine side of it, which we don't need to go into too much detail. But yeah, the shields and the whole trade. But the women go through a very similar process, and they're known as like a divine cup that they sip out of, and that it's the exact same lineage, I believe. And I think that that's also supposed to be a way of passing information. And like you mentioned, the one guy gets to impregnate the one queen, but he represents the entire village impregnating the one queen, just like that one queen also represents the entire village because she's been consuming from the cup of all the other villagers all the way down.
Yeah, it's like Kal-El. You know how Kal-El was like the genetic DNA of every Kryptonian, and they implanted it all into him, and he's just like, now I got to go out.
Superman was just Bach Saga.
Yeah, Superman was Bach Saga. Yeah. They cleaned it up. They cleaned it up though for Hollywood.
Perfect segue. Let's just do this.
Hey, conspiracy buffs! I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go!
Okay, this is way more fun. Oh wow, that's awesome that my camera just turned off. This is way more fun if you're doing actual PCP. So if you check under your chair, I had some sent to you ahead of time. Just go ahead and pop that in. Woo. There you go. It works better with pee, but whatever. I'm going to assume that there's pee in that.
You know, the funny thing is my tea is always a bright yellow, and I get asked that so often because I drink like this mango and pineapple and hibiscus tea, and everyone's like, "What are you drinking?" It's not my pee, you fucking weirdos.
So you gotta lean into it though, because then. And I'm not even kidding about this. People will just think that you are more cerebral, that you're on some other level that, like, oh man, he's either really gross or he's onto something. And more often than not, they'll be like, he's onto something.
Yeah, you got to classy it up though and call it shibambu and not drinking your pee.
Right. Again, we're back into the linguistics game again, man. If this were old country, there wouldn't be more than one name. It would just be pee, and that was it. It would start and end with that.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain oysters. No, these ain't pig nuts. This is a Rocky Mountain oyster. It sounds way better, and I've got a pig nut in my mouth.
Let me get some 1 to 10 ratings from you. 10's going to be you believe, 1 is you don't believe. 5 is like you don't care, you're on the fence. Bigfoot.
Probably 8.
9/11 was an inside job.
Would 10 mean it's absolutely an inside job?
So I mean, 10 would be right between 9 and 11. So I think that's kind of
11. That one's an 11. Yeah. That
on the 9/11 question, you either have to be at a 9 or at an 11. There's nothing in between that.
Yeah.
Not even a 7. You can't even say 7. What about Osama bin Laden was buried at sea out of respect to his culture?
1.
How about the biblical Jesus? Or sorry, biblical Jesus. Historical Jesus is what I meant.
I'm going to go with a 10 myself.
What about supernatural historical Jesus?
6.
What about aliens?
3.
Does it matter if I specify which kind of aliens, or is it pretty much 3 across the board from Greys to Nordics to reptilians?
Yeah. Anything that if you try and hit me and flip side with interdimensional rather than they came from outer space, then now we're talking. Then you're going to get like an 8 or a 9. I
mean, not to get all linguistic about it, but technically extraterrestrial would encompass extra dimensional, right? They're not of the earth.
Is it though? I mean, like just because I can't see something because it's vibrating too fast for me to visualize it, is it in a different spot? It's in a spot I can't access and it can't access my spot, but it's in the same space.
I don't know. I mean, could an extra dimensional being get dirt on its feet?
No, the dirt is vibrating too slow.
So I guess that would still be extraterrestrial because they would not be of dirt or of the earth.
That's a valid point. That's a logical argument.
What about dinosaurs 1 to 10?
I believe
qualified,
10 dinosaurs existed. 1 on like brontosauruses and other Jurassic Park size dinosaurs.
So T-Rex is a 1?
No, T-Rex is real. But is it the size of something off of Jurassic Park? No. I've touched and stood next to T-Rex and the alligator fucking in Katrina, some of them gators or crocodiles that they had to catch that were roaming around swallowing whole people were damn near as big as that T-Rex was. Its shape was different, but if you cut off its tail, 8 feet maybe at best. Rather large head, but not crazy either.
What about dragons?
Very well could have been a dragon rather than a T-Rex. Very well could have been.
Would you consider dragons and dinosaurs interchangeable in that context?
Yes.
What about a human being has stepped foot on the moon in the last 100 years? On or off camera? 0
chance.
How about that Stanley Kubrick specifically was involved in moon landing footage?
That one, I don't even understand how that's a conspiracy. Even Buzz Aldrin, when I believe he was on Conan O'Brien and got asked about the moon landing, and he's like, no, nobody's ever seen it. That was a production, and so a lot of the people immediately jumped to see. He admitted that we've never been to the moon. He didn't really admit that. He admits that the thing that you saw was a production. He's not admitting that he's never been to the moon, which I'm still saying that didn't happen because I'm an alchemist. And like I explained with that whole burping process where the atmosphere will fill up to a certain density or a certain pressure. And at that pressure, it won't allow any of the liquids to vaporize. But if you remove said pressure, those liquids will all vaporize. Well, in a pressurized vacuum system, being next to, it doesn't even have to be a vacuum. a pressurized vapor system doesn't just has to be next to a lower pressure, and all that pressure will whoop say goodbye. It's the way that works.
Let's go on. Let's continue on this path. How about flat Earth from 1 to 10?
5.
What about infinite land flat Earth? I don't know if there's a difference, but I assume that there's some versions where.
Yeah, no, that's a different version. That is a different version. I'd give that a 4 or a 3, maybe.
What about hollow Earth?
I'm gonna go with an 8 or a 9.
Now, what version of hollow Earth is that? Is this just underground cavern systems that people are living in, or like an actual way that you can basically go from one part of the Earth to the other without traveling along the surface?
Well, I would be more inclined to say just the pockets. Just the pockets. I doubt that there is a transition that you can make all the way through. Although the idea that there's a molten metal core that's creating gravity is ridiculous, because if you take it's mostly iron, supposedly, and if you take an iron magnet, or you put iron in a magnetic field, and as soon as it goes molten, it loses that ability. That when it's liquid, it doesn't have that magnetism to it. So if it's liquid, it doesn't have magnetism. I don't even understand what you're talking about.
What about the World Fair cover-up from 1 to 10?
I don't think that that's cover-up at all. I think people are just dummies. Actually, funny enough, Homie Romy and Donunaki Dan, do you remember those guys?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah, man.
The three of us did like a weekend in the Bay, and we did like a whole architecture tour, and including where the World's Fair was supposed to be. And 100% from far away, that shit's Monet as hell, right? From far away, it looks amazing. As soon as you get up close, you're like, oh, this is Home Depot garden statuary. Like, this was now when you look at it, you can absolutely tell it's basically Lego blocks, pre-poured Lego blocks. So while the thing might have went up in 2 days, that doesn't mean that there wasn't 4 years of preparation put into that 2 days. And then when they go on about, oh my God, it had electricity. Man, have you been to fucking Mexico? Have you ever ran DC lighting? You can string that up. I can string up an entire block houses by myself for construction with lighting like that in a day by myself without even trying. Like, this is not hard. They didn't have the safety regulations and codes that we have today. They were just like, it was like Mexico, just open wiring hanging out, and that works. It's shocking the conditions that electricity will still flow in, and people think that it won't, but oh yeah, it works under pretty shitty conditions.
What about time traveling Trump from 1 to 10? And let me just add one extra qualifier on that. That this is like that Fred Trump discovers Nikola Tesla's papers, and he derives time travel from whatever plot line it is, but that's the context of this time travel Trump claim.
Maybe like a 6.
Oh, more than a 5. Yeah. What about, so where are you at on like the Baron Trump story? Like, it was that actually Baron, and he traveled into the past or traveled into the future?
No, I'm gonna have to give that a 3, maybe.
So you're saying there's a chance?
I do think that there is definitely a chance. That's a weird kid right there, right? That is one weird dude. But time travel is so weird. So to me, you wouldn't even go back in the past to change things. You would go in the future if you wanted to change things. The future writes the past. It's like, even when you look at the mythologies, who would be the old person? Like, in the future, how old are you going to be, Thomas? Are you going to be younger or older?
In the future, I mean, unless it's a trick question, I assume I'll be older.
Right. And your past self is like a baby, right?
A big baby.
Right. So why is it in all these myths that the future person is a baby and the past person is old?
I don't know if I follow.
Like, you look at all these myths where they talk about it, the one that represents the path is an old hag. The one that represents the future is a young person, and they're supposed to basically represent time. Right?
Okay, yeah, I follow.
So let's look at reality. Your future self is the old hag. Your past self is the young person. Why is there this inversion happening? And so to me, when you look at it, the future is very etheric and the past is salt. When you're looking at it alchemically, right? The past is already concrete. It's solid. It's a known factor. The future is your unknown factor. That's your sulfur side, your chaotic side. But when you look at it, the salt, the way like the great work works, the salt is being opened up by the mercury, and then the sulfur is transferring into the salt. So the sulfur is the active portion of this whole thing. So just like with Masaru Emoto's work, where he has the water, well, the salt's being opened up by the water, and then you're going, and now here you're acting as the sulfur. You can even see it. You can yell at the water and watch the water catch that vibration, and that salt that's dissolved inside that now reads that, picks it up, and you're going to dissolve out that water, and that salt's going to retain that because that's the hard portion of the memory.
Well, just like we've got linear and non-linear algebra, couldn't there technically be like a non-linear alchemy where, right, where like the old version of you is really the young
non-Euclidean alchemy?
Yeah, I mean, isn't that possibly like, like we haven't discovered like the calculus of alchemy yet because we still have to get to like non-Euclidean alchemy.
God dang, non-Euclidean is the most mind-bending shit, right? If you ever try looking at that, that's just so horrible. Like something can be next to each other and miles apart at the same exact time. Like,
in my mind, this is hard to separate from alchemy because my introduction to alchemy was more from like Rene Descartes and who he was bumping up into, and like the same way that they would encode their notes and talking about these platonic solids nesting inside of each other. But he was clearly in a linear algebraic mentality, and the people that came after him, they were in like the non-Euclidean, like non-linear style. Which like it almost seems like that was a whole nother level that unlocked after he came and went. But it doesn't make any of his discoveries less valid. And it doesn't mean that the things that came afterwards weren't built on top of the linear version. But like, it seems like linear always has to come first, and then non-linear follows that as an abstraction of the linear.
Yes, I totally understand what you're saying with that, because the masculine has to set the course. When you're looking at it, this is just sacred geometry. It's lines and circles, right? And the lines are setting up the form of things, and then the circles giving you like your aura.
It's like the guide crystal.
Yes, exactly. Exactly right. In your fortress of solitude, where Superman is jacking off and eating it.
Last one for no in particular order, 1 to 10 that Timothy McVeigh was sheep dipped. Is that a 10 nod?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that guy didn't do that by himself. You guys they're freaking nuts. That guy got sank. I actually knew a girl that was supposed to be on that jury, and she had spina bifida and couldn't sit for long enough, so she ended up having to get cycled out. But I went to Longs Peak Junior High back in junior high. Funny enough, Jake is living there now. But she was gonna be on that jury, And I'm like, oh, damn. And she was kind of into conspiracy stuff, so she might have shanked that jury.
If only she knew to drink her pee, that would have cleared that right up, and she could have been on the jury.
Exactly. Poured a little bit on it, maybe bathed in it. Oh, man. The one night that I was there, they're like, you want to go whirlpool hot tubbing? And I'm like, no, I just don't even like hot tubbing. But then I find out that they were all peeing in it and then soaking in their urine in the hot tub. Like, why?
I mean, coincidentally, I think that will get you out of jury duty. If you start mentioning like all these practices, that's a quick way to get out of jury duty, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I would just explain that I understand what jury nullification is. And if this person's not up here for raping, killing, or something like that.
I thought that too. The last time I had jury duty, I was like, watch this. I was like, I got a cheat code. It's going to get me right out of here. And I was like, yeah, jury nullification. What if I just don't believe in the jury system as a whole? Therefore, I can't ever convict anyone guilty in a system that I don't believe. And what they did was they made me the alternate juror, which means I had to sit there and listen to all the crap. And then I didn't even get to vote who gets voted off the island at the end. I just had to go home.
We're going to make you powerlessly just sit and oversee. Sucker. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Touche. Yeah. So you don't want to play that card too hard, but if you just casually mention like, how many breaks are we going to get because I'm on this new diet where I have to consume my own urine every 2 hours, otherwise I don't get to meet the ascended masters. Maybe that would have worked better than just going straight jury nullification, but I'll never know.
I live in California. I'm not 100% sure that was going to fly. Like they would have been like, well, which one?
Yeah, you too?
Yeah. Which one? Fortunately, Jesus is in that group of the Great White Brotherhood super friends. So, you quick use that one.
Well, Benjamin Balderson, we talked about a whole bunch. I got to talk about Norse mythology. We talked about weed. We talked about pee. We talked about Bach Saga. What did we not get into that we should leave for the next one? Or did we cover it all?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. How definitely one of the things that we should talk about in the next one is the way that now I've talked about the somewhat about the alchemical process, but how do you get cats to not knock things off of everything is what we were going to no. How do you then, for benefit or for evil, start altering that process, and what are the possible results of that, and how can we see that happening in the world around us right now, especially with the things we consume.
I'll throw an extra one on there too. I would love to get into that process of alchemy and what other mediums it exists in, because we kind of talked about in horticulture and botany, there's an alchemy version. I mean, that the lesser work is literally an herbal stone, I believe, right? Like that is the main lesser work. But then you've got alchemy in like a Jungian sense where you can go through psychological transformations. One of the ones that it's not necessarily new or novel now, but that Kubrick was also performing alchemy in the medium of film and cinematography, the same way that an alchemist might do it in a lab with, beakers and pelican tubes.
100%. Even it's hilarious. My oldest son, his favorite show was Dragon Ball Z. And I watched in Dragon Ball Z where it went from the blackening to the reddening to the yellow, and I was like to the bright white. I was like, really? Did he just go through the alchemy process?
The Japanese cartoons are onto some very high level. I mean, Full Metal Alchemist, it's right in the name, but that one is pretty deep. They get into like grimoires and Enochian magic. You mentioned Dragon Ball Z 100%. There's also, I just started watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is about these angels come down to Earth. And in order to defeat these fallen angels, we have to find the carcasses of dead fallen angels and kind of like turn them into these big Voltron bodies, but really it's like a dead angel body that you use to fight another dead angel. And every single part of that series, they're always bringing up the Kabbalistic tree of life, and they're traveling to these different nodes. And I just wonder, like, how come we didn't get any cool alchemical cartoons in the 80s and 90s? All these Japanese kids were getting it, and they might not even know what the hell was going on.
And now they're sniffing panties out of a vending machine, and we don't have that.
Tell people where they can find you, what other projects you got going on. You got, I don't know, a book or a circus, or you're selling pee in jars, whatever it is. Now's the time to schlock it.
Yeah, I've upgraded it from pee to where on hot days, especially when I've been out working in the barn, I strap a little receptacle that catches my armpit sweat drips. And I figure, whatever way you want to consume that, it's a little more expensive in the winter because there isn't as much quantity. You can understand that. But, it's high summer right now, good availability, low price for what you're getting.
You got to turn it into diamonds. That's what you got to do. You got to figure out a way to like separate the terpenes from the raw salt of it all.
Exactly. It's going to be very salty, very salt heavy. Yeah. Catch us on, we're just going under Benjamin Balderson right now. We tried actually getting around the YouTube black finger that's on us by having a guy from a completely different computery station that has never been that open up the deliberating dog face dudes, and it just will not release its stranglehold. So we just went back to using the Benjamin Balderson channel, but on Tuesdays at 6 Pacific. And then I do have a debate coming up. We don't have a date yet, but Jim Bob, anybody that knows Jim, made by Jim Bob, and one of his ortho bro buddies that is a very smart guy. We're going to go ahead and go head to head. And the idea is which is better for society, the heathen theology, religion, or the Christian, which obviously to me, the Christian theology is very disempowering as opposed to one that promotes self-sufficiency and honor and things like that. So we're going to have a nice little banger. My buddy Steve just had the Third Eye Carnival. So anybody wants to check that out. And there's going to be another one of those coming up in Oregon here this fall. So I'm probably going to be attending that.
You're killing it, man. Thank you so much for coming on here. Everyone definitely check out Deliberating Dog Face Dudes. I love the debates that you guys go into. I usually try to stay away from some of it because I find out that I don't have a strong enough opinion on anything to get into a debate about something. Like I can't fight for something because you can easily change my mind mid-debate. And that's usually not how debates work. You have to go in there like rock hard and ready to just like plow right through and kind of ignore everything. And I was in debate club, so I understand even being able to argue a position that you're not even for and just knowing how to make a very strong argument for it. And it kind of takes all the fun out of it a little bit, because now it's like when you work in movies or you work in music and a new album comes out, it's like, oh, I know how they made that sound. They use this patch. Or in a movie, you're like, I know how they achieve that effect. And then you're not watching the movie anymore. But I love it when you guys do it because it goes into avenues that I'm not expecting. It's never something that you go and you're like, oh, I know how this is going to play out. It's pretty much the opposite of that.
Yes, because none of us like you, we're not fanatics about anything. So we're willing to do what it say, travel down whatever path. We don't care. Like there's very few things you can't get me to entertain and, at least go through the mind exercise. And we are, for whatever reason, the debating has not been real successful for us. It turns out we are not overly debatable people, and most people just turn and run. Some of the biggest name debaters out there have agreed to debate us and then backed out and ran like little cowards, and actually a lot over and over. And
you drop any names? Are there any big names?
Oh yeah, Andrew Wilson. Andrew Wilson's the hot one. Everybody just loves. That guy debates, like mad. He probably is top 3 super chatted channels weekly on a regular basis. The guy makes like $5,000 a day in super chats, and he agreed to it. And then we got into a fight on Twitter about it because Steve Poikin in Slow News Day, he brought it up like this guy'll take, anytime he meets a retarded OnlyFans whore, he's ready to drop whatever he's doing and have a hot debate that moment. But he's been dodging Balderson since October of last year. And Andrew Wilson's like, oh yeah, show me the proof. And then as soon as I showed him the proof, he's like, oh yeah, show me more proof. Because he's like, oh yeah, why didn't you send me a reminder? So I started posting the reminders. And then he's like, oh yeah, and just crying around. And Jay Dyer is a total bitch. Actually, Nico House, who used to run the American portion of Russia Today or Russia Tonight, RT, he bailed on one. Like, it's just like over and over, we just keep getting people that'll bail. And it's funny because where I think the biggest problem is like Steve is the political expert. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. Some of the things that are on some of my views would traditionally be considered more liberal. Some of my views would be considered more conservative. Either way, when they do dirty shit, I don't approve of it on any side, and they have a problem with that. The fanatics, like Thomas said, being a fanatic is so much more fun. When you go to a football game, you don't want to be at a Vikings Packers football game and not really give a shit about either side. You're like, oh yeah, football, yeah, they threw it over, yep, they went over, yep. But if you fanatically taken one side or the other, well, now we've got a game. Now this is exciting. Now you get to watch the guys you hate. I hate those Muslims. I hate those Muzzies. And my side winning against yay. And then when the Muzzies do something, oh, the Muzzies, they're such bad guys. Like you got to have somebody. You got to have a proper heel to have a good baby face.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, you do need to have a heel in order for the whole wrestling match. Otherwise, if both of them are like neutrals, then what are we even doing here? It's just two flaccid guys. Then you're like, wait a minute, are these just two half-naked dudes wearing Speedos hugging on the ground? This is not what I thought it was. Yeah,
exactly. You don't care about the results. You don't care about who's getting hit or who's taking damage, who wins. You just don't care. You're just like, God, is this going to get over so I can watch the one that I care about, which has a heel and a baby face? Yeah, you can't. You've got to have, like, even as a moviegoer, you like Game of Thrones, that Joffrey kid. Oh, he was getting death threats and hate mails. And that was the most popular show that there was at the time. I mean, people were it immediately turned into a cultural sensation. And he's a better portion of the reason than anybody you would have called somewhat of a good guy. Like, just wanting that guy to suffer, just fucking hate that guy. Like, that's what kept you there. Just, you knew that he was going to pay eventually, and you were dying to see it.
Well, I definitely love, and I look forward to whenever I've got a chance to catch one of the DDDs, the triple Ds. We're all big fans, so keep that going, man. I'm looking forward to the next one, and I'll see you tomorrow night. I think we're doing something
on Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes.
Let's do it, man. I don't know what my position's going to be. I guess dog style.
You know what? Marcus is going to be back, and he was at church camp last week getting all kinds of mind reprogramming, so none of us know what's happening tomorrow. But we are glad you were going to join it. You have the perfect beard for it, and it's always awesome to talk with you.
Ready for a cosmic conspiracy about Stanley Kubrick, moon landings, and the CIA? Go visit nasacomic.com.
nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com. Oh, nasacomic.com, CIA's biggest con. Stanley Kubrick put us on, that's why we're singing this song. I'm nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Go visit nasacomic.com. Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com.
Never a Straight Answer is a 40-page comic about Stanley Kubrick directing the Apollo space missions.
Yeah, go visit nasacomic.com.
This is the perfect read for comic, Kubrick, or conspiracy fans of all ages. For more details, visit nasacomic.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hey, maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Matters not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.